All right. So
Maybe.
gavel and call the meeting to order. All right, it is 6:16, and I call this meeting to order. You roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski. Councilor Schmal.
Here.
Councilor Weimer.
Here.
Councilor Schachter.
Here.
Councilor Smith. We have a quorum.
The changes for conflicts to disclose. Nope. Moving on. Council announcements. Maybe any council announcements? Councilor Smith?
Is that the right button?
Yeah. Go.
Thank you. The RAFTA board, the Regional Roaring Fork Transportation Authority Board meeting was last week. In Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski's absence, I attended and kept track of several things that were presented, but the two highlights were a presentation on rider survey, onboard surveys of bus riders throughout the various RAFTA routes. They conveniently, from my perspective, delivered a composite set of survey results and then a subset of the regional route results from between Glenwood Springs and Aspen. So, and then they also broke out Ride Glenwood Springs. So there's some pretty deep data there, at least in terms of rider attitudes. I'll be sure that gets passed on. So in case any other council members or staff want to see that, I found it very informative and encouraging. Those who ride between Glenwood Springs and Up Valley destinations had a very high satisfaction rate or very favorable impression of their ridership. So it strikes me that may be something to use in a transit promotional program in the future to say, people who do this are happy. You might want to try it too. The other thing that came up was, you may remember that this council approved some funding and the continued partnership with Clean Energy Economy for the region on designing a transportation management organization through the two valleys. It's a study and a design program and some incentive programs that will continue over the next year in strong partnership with our engineering staff. RAFTA approved an additional $25,000 to go into that project in addition to the $100,000 state money and the $12,000 from this council. So they're off to the races. I did presume to ask at that meeting that they bring back quarterly progress reports. And so we'll be able to convey those back here as well. Historic Preservation Commission had its regular meeting. They have begun going to most of the Tuesday market events with a display on what they do and to recruit applications for that commission. They're also working on a designation, a historic designation formality process for the city that's based on state and federal guidances that they're digging into pretty thoughtfully. Coming up is the Garfield Clean Energy Board will meet on Friday. They too are going to talk about the Transportation Management Organization project in a little bit more detail than the RAFTA board did. We'll also learn more about a program that I mentioned briefly a couple of meetings ago. The Colorado Energy Office is administering $50 million worth of grants to municipalities for climate related projects, $2 million at a pop. The first round of applications has already come and gone, but the next one is coming up in November. This is going to be a more thorough presentation than I got the first time I heard about it. So again, I'll bring back some more details when the time comes. Thanks very much.
Do I turn them off?
Yeah, but I can go ahead and do that for you.
Anybody else? Okay, I have a couple. So,
Like,
hold on. I thought it was on.
You're always on.
Okay, it was on.
She's,
Maybe I'm not.
oh. You're not on. Should be. Hold on. There you go.
Okay.
there we go.
Thank you. All right, so probably no surprise to anybody, but we are entered into stage 2 fire restrictions. So those are in place until further notice. If you would like any other details on that, you can read more at cogs.us/fire. Additionally, on Thursday, July 24th, so that's 1 week from today, the City of Glenwood Springs will host a community town hall webinar via Zoom at 6 p.m. City officials will share information and take questions about law enforcement response, encampments, fire concerns, intervention efforts, and resources. This is around our unhoused population. And so again, that is Thursday, July 24th. It's virtual, so you don't have to be there. And you can learn more and submit questions ahead of time at the city website, which is cogs.us. And finally, it's Riverfest time. So be sure to register for Riverfest. This helps us get an accurate head count for food and beers, very important. This is the first Saturday on August 2nd from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. It's a great opportunity to get out and clean up our river corridors, have a fun day with friends and neighbors, and give back to our community, and also cherish one of our most important resources, our rivers. And so you can register online at cogs.us/riverfest, all one word, no spaces. That's all I got. All right, so turn myself off. Okay, so moving on. Are there any citizens appearing before council for items not on the agenda? No. Okay, moving on. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, Mitchell?
Good to go.
Is that,
Don't know what that was.
Sorry, it's Mitchell.
I apologize. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
all right, so moved in a second, all in favor? Any opposed? Looks like motion passes. I don't think I'm on again.
No, you're on.
I am, okay. It's just not as loud. Okay, good. All right. So the next item on the agenda is a presentation by Middle Colorado Watershed. I think that's, welcome Kate Collins. Thanks.
I'm unaccustomed to not having it all happening so quickly, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it's great to see some familiar faces here and some new faces. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kate Collins. I'm the reasonably new executive director of the Middle Colorado Watershed Council. I started in October. Been standing on the shoulders of Paula's step to kind of get things going and keep the momentum up. And the learning curve has kind of been like this. Very, very recently, it started to be a little bit more like that. Maybe like the Manitou incline, Anyway, I have 5 minutes to talk with you tonight. And the reason I wanted to come was just because so many of us are new and we're not acquainted with one another. I'd like to give you really an update at least once a year. And I'd love to have coffee with everybody. It's always just so hard to fit all those in. But a good time for us to come up to speed with mutual priorities. So just wanted to talk really about restoration, fire resilience, and education in the watershed. And we represent the watershed from the east end of Glenwood Canyon to DeBeck. We also incorporate the riparian areas and the tributaries. So it ends up being about 75 river miles or 2,200 square miles. We are really focused on, gosh, 6 or 7 priorities, but I tried to pick the ones that were most important to Glenwood to talk about for tonight. And so we can move forward, Ryan. Thank you. Or I can do that, I guess, huh? It's all me. So if you've been in Glenwood Canyon recently, you'll see some new interpretive signage. That was the result of a multi-agency collaboration with the Forest Service, CPW, Ciudad, and the National Forest Foundation and Middle Colorado Watershed Council. We started out with the Glenwood Canyon Restoration Alliance after the Grizzly Creek fires, and we created new signage that incorporates the history of the fire. So it really tells the story of the ecology and the waterway and the fire. And I'm proud to say that the new interpretive signs are just sturdier. They look beautiful. They're in Spanish and English. They look like they'll be a lot more durable than previous signs that get blasted out by the sun. So do look for those. They're at the No Name Trailhead and the Grizzly Creek put in Blue Gulch along the bike path and at the Shoshone boat ramp. I put in a couple of pictures of those signs. And it seems like just getting a few little signs in should be reasonably straightforward. It was just exceedingly complex. And I have one employee, Liberty Costello, who's our project manager, and she really kind of rode herd on that project. The other big project for us is the Colorado River Wildfire Collaborative. And I spoke today to Carrie McInnes, who is the city manager of, or town manager of Debec. And it's interesting, I think, for Glenwood Springs and Debec to be on the edges of our boundary, because you're kind of like, Debec is kind of in Mesa County, and here you're kind of aligning with the Roaring Fork Wildfire Collaborative. But we really hope that we'll have your support and buy-in of this collaborative as well. You know, I've been up and down. My office is at River Stop and Rifle, and on I-70, you know, every few hundred yards, it feels like, oh, certainly every few miles, there's a burn scar these days because things are just so hot. You talked about our fire danger. We were at severe, and now we're at extreme, and the only level above that is exceptional. So that's a D3 drought rating. We had 35 partners in our MOU to get this thing started. And it's just extraordinary, I think, what Paula did with every single fire district in it, every single municipality, and the county. So we have this framework. I can tell you that the group has a little bit of meeting fatigue. We've been meeting for several years, and it's been hard for us to address projects without any funding and without any dedicated leadership. Because we're a watershed group, we have all these other projects too. And you'll notice that most of the wildfire collaboratives just focus on that one thing. So we've been working on trying to hire a program manager, but before we can do that, we have to raise the funds for a program manager. But I'm proud to say that we were awarded the Rural Grant Navigator grant through Colorado State Forest Service. We applied for $70,500. We were awarded $42,300, 60%. The other awards out of 11 applicants were Fire Adapted Colorado, FACO, and the Roaring Fork Wildfire Collaborative. So it was good to be competitive in that. We were sad that we didn't get the whole award because it would have set us up to hire a grant researcher and grant writer for 3 years. We're reworking our plan now, and I think we're just going to go for the gusto for the first year. Probably going for what's called the furworm grant, which is through Colorado State Forest Service, and understanding that our federal resources are going to be vulnerable and not something we can really count on. So we're contiguous with the Eagle River Coalition, the Roaring Fork Conservancy, and River's Edge West. So those are the other watershed groups that we are hooked in with. The next thing I wanted to touch on is our Wildfire Ready Action Plan, which you all contributed to. We call it the WRAP, and we did the first one in Colorado. This is more about, I can't get to it, but I urge you all to click on that link or just take a cruise on our website at midcowatershed.org. But it has fluvial hazard mapping, and we're doing more work on that. We have grant funding right now to complete that by May with low-tech hydrological. So we'll have a whole other map layer for Garfield County planning, where people who want to build next to a waterway or the river can and think, well, this isn't going to flood. I mean, we talk about 100-year events and how and why it's not a good idea to mess with the fluvial hazard zone floodplain. We locally with Glenwood Springs Middle School for many years have had River Watch, which is a local youth-based water quality measuring class. And we get that data and it goes into a state database and then it goes into a national database. So it's real citizen science. And that has been a longstanding program of our organization, which we started in 2014. We started a new program just to raise dollars for capacity for our organization, the Fire and Water Speaker Series, which is a winter event. We did it March, April, and May, or it's a spring event. And we hosted a sellout event in that series at Vaudeville with Zach Podmore and some filmmakers with What the River Knows and Frank Martin playing music there. We will also host our Wild and Scenic Film Fest. That's our largest annual fundraiser at the Vaudeville on October 2nd and October 4th at the Ute in Rifle this year. We're going to make it so RE2 and RE16 youth students, middle school and high school, can go to the Ute event at no charge, trying to bring up that next generation of environmental stewards. And then our River Stop Interpretive Center, if you haven't been there in Rifle, I urge you to come by. We've been tidying it up and we're getting a mural painted there by local artist Maria Beam, just really trying to activate the space and make it a community and visitor asset. You've been reading about all the aquatic nuisance species, zebra and quagga mussels and others. There's rusty crayfish and some other bad critters out there. But we are very active in trying to get the word out to everybody about how to clean, drain, and dry your river gear, just what's at stake if you don't. And I think we discovered them most recently around Newcastle.
Oh, no.
Finally, when we partner together, any of the grants that we get, we can leverage. I can write letters of support for the grants that the city of Glenwood Springs is going after. You're integrating with a local team that's delivering real outcomes. I applied for $9,000 with your financial advisory board, and then Middle Colorado was awarded $3,000. And it's a system where I'm not sure who's making the decisions. I'm not sure how to help them with questions they don't know the answer to. I wrote when we're grateful for the help. I don't want to sound like we're not, but just trying to understand just a little bit more about that process and hoping that you would consider the just that remaining balance. We have a $1.3 million budget this year, and we have a $158,000 operating budget. So what we have are these gigantic grants that come in and they go right back out. So what we operate on are these capacity building fundraising events that we do and on indirect costs in our grants, which are typically no more than 10%. So we run a tight ship. We have a small staff. We have, hands on board and just try and get the job done. I had just two more things to mention very quickly, that because the whole situation is so dynamic, that didn't get in the slideshow when I gave it to Ryan a week ago, but I met with the USGS, the CDOT and Colorado River District folks today about our water quality monitoring initiative, which has kind of been tabled for a while because of lack of funding. But CDOT has some funding for research that we plan to apply for, and we will be looking for match partners. So I'll likely be back to talk with you more about that in whatever format you recommend is best. And then the other thing is something called a recreation partnership initiative through CPW. Western Colorado is one of the only places in Colorado that doesn't have one of these partnerships. You're sort of in the Roaring Fork one, but when they did all the research on the recreational assets there, they kind of started in Carbondale and Thomas Lakes and went up to Independence Pass. So there aren't really any assets in Glenwood that have been studied there. We would very much like to have you in the Regional Partnership Initiative for Colorado River Valley. And when you're in there, in subsequent years, they're going to unlock $50 million on a state level so that we can all access those funds for other recreational initiatives. And the idea is we draw a boundary around what we believe is our recreational footprint, which I frankly think is the watershed. And then we can include all of our recreational assets from, hunting and fishing and boating and biking and hiking and all the rest. So more on that to come as well.
Awesome.
Let's talk.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I just wanted to let you know too, the links in your presentation do work on our end. So
Oh,
we
good.
can all click through that, get the
Okay.
other information that you've got embedded. Did anybody have any questions for Kate? Steve?
Thank you, Kate. That's a lot for a little organization who meets in a rest stop to pull off. So thank you. I can't help thinking that Rusty Crayfish was an old comic strip character. Is it?
It's not really that funny.
The Financial Advisory Board recommendations and the community grants program that this council and previous councils approved. You mentioned that you got $3,000. When I went back and looked, I thought that the chart we received said that the original request was $7,500. Not a big difference. Well, it's sort of a big difference from the 9,000 that you mentioned. Is there a discrepancy there?
Could be that I made a mistake too.
Okay, it may be closer than we thought, but thank you. You mentioned also that the middle school does its river watch, its quality measurements since 2014.
Our organization's been in existence since 2014.
Because that program has been going a lot longer than that, is that?
Oh, yeah.
Or they're not two different programs?
No.
Okay.
But there's new partners who come in and integrate with it.
Great, thank you. And this is great. Selfishly, I'm real interested in rivers, so it's great that we get a presentation periodically. Do you work at all, or at least or more regularly, with our river commission, city river commission, who has some pretty robust agendas of their own and may have some common interests?
Paula Step still sits on that, and then I call it Paula Step, but I should get to the River Commission. I get spread a little thin because of so many municipalities in our footprint.
Oh, yeah, I don't think, I'm not suggesting a pressure that here's something more for you to do. It just may be an opportunity to communicate with the city more regularly.
Sure.
Than an annual 5-minute show.
And Erica, the chair of the River Commission, is a regular volunteer of ours as
Oh, good.
well. So we have a little
Perfect.
cross.
Perfect.
And we will be participating in River Fest. We'll have a booth there.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else? Any comments from the community? No? Any other comments from council? Nope. All right. Well, I just wanted to say thanks. I appreciate all that you do. I was dazzled by, the work that Paula has done and, how much I've seen your organization grow over the years since it first, started off. I love the wild and scenic. I was curious about the recreational partnership. When it comes time, I'm guessing that would be something that maybe working with our tourism boards or community? Would that be a good strategic partnership
I
there?
think so. I think we were gonna loop in all the chambers. I think though too, that it's important for each municipality to kind of check that box.
Got it. So I'm assuming you'll reach out to us and tell us how we can help.
Yeah, and we had a letter of interest that needed to go tomorrow. And so Alicia Gressley, who's the head of the Colorado River Valley Economic Development Partnership, is driving that. And we have many organizations in it like Rambo and City of Redwood and individual businesses and outfitters, stuff like that.
Well, let us know how we can help, because that sounds like something that, we should definitely be a part of.
I will send you a note tomorrow or tonight even. Okay,
All right, well, Kate, thank you so much.
thank you.
Have a good
I
evening.
appreciate it.
All right, so next on the agenda is presentation by Mountain Family Health.
There you go.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, members of the council. Really excited to be here. My name's Dustin Moyer. I'm a patient and the CEO of Mountain Family Health Centers. We are a community health center that serves 3 counties, Garfield County, Pitkin County, and Eagle County. Our mission is to improve the health of our community by providing affordable and equitable medical, behavioral, and dental health care for all. A little bit about the clinics that we operate. As I mentioned, we're a community health center, and I'll share a little bit more what that means. But we operate 8 clinic sites across those 3 counties. You can see them there. 5 of them are what we call hub sites. So those are standalone facilities. The balance are in schools. So they're school-based health centers. We do have one in the Glenwood Springs High School. Over the last year in 2024, we saw about 16,500 patients. Our 18-month count for unique patients is about 20,000. So that's probably a closer reflection of the number of patients that rely on Mountain Family for healthcare. I'll share a little bit about what we do and why it's important. This slide is just meant to demonstrate that the care that we're providing is really effective from a cost perspective. Community health centers, including Mountain Family, save the Medicaid system money, and I'll share a little bit more about how we do that. But on average, the average total cost of care for a health center patient is about 80% of what a similar patient would cost the system if they were seen at a private independent practice. So how do we do that? We do it in a number of ways. Most importantly is our model of integrated care. So we provide medical, dental, and behavioral health services at each of our hub sites. And then we practice what's called integrated team-based care. That means each of those providers is working together to ensure that if a patient comes in for their annual wellness check and they show signs of depression, we're able to bring in a behavioral health provider right there. Similarly, we have warm handoffs between our medical, behavioral, and dental services as well. So we know a lot of the health comes from what's going on in your mouth. And so if a patient presents with dental issues, we're able to care for them in that same visit. I'll also mention we provide a host of wraparound supports that include social determinants of health screening and referrals, care coordination, and supporting transitions of care. Those are really important because they address what is often the bigger driver of health outcomes. And those are referred to as social determinants of health. But that can look like if one of our patients is experiencing housing instability or food insecurity, we know that those factors are going to be much more likely to lead to negative health outcomes than if they didn't have those issues. So we work to understand the issues that our patients are navigating and then connect them to the right referral partners that can help to close those gaps as well. And because of those services, that's how we drive down the cost for the state. I mentioned we have school-based health centers. I think of those as mini clinics. So they're independent from school nurses. They are a full suite of services as well, just in a much smaller footprint in that school setting. And then in Glenwood Springs, we operate 2 clinics. The first is over by Valley View Hospital. So if you know where Peds Partner is, we're on the backside of that building. And then our second is the school-based health center in Glenwood Springs. So this gives you a sense of the patients that we serve. For our Glenwood Springs clinic locations, and the last 12 months, we've served over 5,000 patients, 5,000 unique patients. Those 5,000 unique patients visited us about 17,500 times. This is a really important slide because I think it helps to highlight the dynamics of the communities that we're serving. The important number to pay attention to is that bottom, that uninsured rate. We, as a community health center, have a commitment to serving every patient, regardless of insurance coverage or ability to pay. And so that means that we are always available to serve patients without insurance. We also have to navigate the financial challenges of having a high uninsured rate. Medicaid, as a community health center, is our best payer. They pay us essentially on a cost-based basis. Uninsured patients typically are able to pay 5 cents on the total on the dollar for that total cost of care that we incur. The reason that this uninsured rate is so high, and if you're to look at our counterparts across the state, this is going to be 2 to 3 times higher than other parts of the state for one pretty significant reason, and that's the cost of living out here. So what we see is our patients, the overwhelming majority are employed, but they're working in jobs that will pay higher than say jobs on the Eastern Plains or a lot of Front Range communities or the San Luis Valley. But what that higher wage does is that it pushes them out of Medicaid eligibility. So Medicaid eligibility is capped at about $138,000, or excuse me, 138% of the federal poverty level, regardless of what it costs to live in a community. So for a family of 4, that's about $44,000. That if you go above that, you're no longer eligible for Medicaid. And because we're in this high cost of living community, we know that everything costs more, including healthcare coverage. And so what we see is patients who are earning above that threshold often are unable to afford plans on the exchange, even with subsidies included, because their rent dollars are stretched further, their food dollars are stretched further. And oftentimes our patients are working in jobs that aren't offering employer-sponsored coverage, so service sector and construction jobs. So some of the dynamics that I think are important to highlight that we navigate. The first is the high uninsured rate, and I kind of mentioned the dynamics for that baseline. We saw that increase starting in 2023 as a result of the state's Medicaid unwind. So just for some quick context, during the COVID-19 pandemic, part of the public health emergency that was issued included a provision called continuous eligibility for Medicaid. What that meant is that people who came onto Medicaid did not have to reaffirm their eligibility every 12 months, which is what they normally have to do. Instead, they were able to stay on it until the end of the public health emergency. But when that provision expired, the state had to reaffirm the 1.5 million people who were on Medicaid. And in navigating that, I think a fair assessment would be that the state didn't necessarily have the infrastructure to process those applications. We heard of a lot of our patients who didn't receive the notification that they needed to reapply. The Medicaid application is lengthy and pretty complex to navigate. And then that we have learned there's a few administrative errors that disenrolled people when they shouldn't have been. At Mount Family, about 2,000 of our patients lost Medicaid coverage during that time period. From a revenue perspective, that was about $1.5 million hit for our bottom line. I also think it's important, things are moving quickly, so it's not included in my slide, but with the passage of HR 1 at the federal level a couple weeks ago, there are a number of provisions contained within it that will make healthcare coverage more difficult to access. And I think we're going to feel that effect pretty acutely. The main ones being the expiration of enhanced subsidies for ACA exchange plans, and then also the additional reporting requirements for Medicaid eligibility. The state has estimated that nearly 400,000 Coloradans are at risk of losing their coverage as a result of the bill. And so I think we'll see kind of hits on both sides. One is previously uninsured patients, Mount Family patients who were previously uninsured will lose their insurance. And then I also think that patients who receive their care in the private setting will probably seek out Mount Family once, if and when they lose their coverage. There are a couple of opportunities that we have leveraged. On January 1 of this year, there was a new Medicaid program that went into effect. It's called Cover All Coloradans. It essentially operates a Medicaid lookalike program that is available to pregnant women and kids, regardless of immigration status. We know that prenatal care is so important for both the mothers and their children, and so this has been a great program that we have seen some benefit from. Because of those dynamics that I mentioned, we can't do any of this work without great partners, including the city of Glenwood Springs. So just highlighting here what our partner support looks like for that clinic. And truly, we really lean into the community aspect of community health. And so heartfelt thank you to this group and to all our partners who make this work possible. Again, kind of the ways in which that we rely on partners. So in addition to financial support, any effort to increase insurance coverage always helps us. And that can include making sure that folks are aware of the Cover All Coloradans provision. So key takeaways, we are here to serve everyone in the community, regardless of insurance coverage or ability to pay. We provide very high quality integrated care that reduces the total cost of care for the state. And we really rely on our partners to make that work possible. So thank you for the support and the opportunity to share a little bit more about Mount Family.
Thank you very much.
And I included a patient story that we collect from our patient satisfaction surveys. And I think this is powerful just because it shows the tremendous staff that we have that are all working to make sure people have healthcare access. And there's 20,000 of these people.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for, Sumner?
Thank you very much. The service is so necessary and becoming more necessary given what's going on. A more specific question on your school-based healthcare program here in Glenwood, or how do the students access your services? What's the way they receive your services?
Yeah, that's, I think the special thing about the school-based health center model is that because it's in the school-based setting, kids can come by over their lunch break or between classes. They can schedule their appointments during the day. And so it removes a barrier to care for families, for parents who are maybe working both jobs, who don't have the ability to take off work. So you'd access it the same way you would sites at any of our hub clinics, where you could schedule it on our online platform. But I think more often than not, young people just pop in to get that care. I would mention that the model of school-based health centers, while it does have a lot of advantages in terms of access, it has significant challenges in terms of the sustainability proposition. That's because we have a smaller audience to reach. Most of the patients that we see there are the students in the school. We also provide a fair amount of services to student siblings. So if they're not going to that school directly, their siblings, they have a sibling there, but they operate on a much smaller footprint as well. So our hub site, if you ever had the chance to walk through our Glenwood Springs clinic, it's 10 exam rooms, 3 dental chairs. And so we have a lot of infrastructure and capacity to see patients, but these school-based health centers are 1 or 2, and it needs the same staffing ratios. So you're not able to see as many patients, and as much as we try to work towards more value-based care, it's still largely a fee-for-service world. And so it makes those tough. We did have to close 2 of our school-based health centers at the beginning of the year in Basalt. We had 2, one at Basalt High School, one at Basalt Middle School. Made the difficult decision to close those just to navigate some of those challenges that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
All right, Steve?
Thank you, and thank you for this whirlwind of detail. Almost the very last thing you said, other than the testimonial, was that your service is open to all, which I think is easy to interpret as whether you can pay or not, you're welcome. But if you jolly well can play, you're welcome as well, correct? People
Yeah,
who are fully insured, have
that's absolutely
Medicare or group plans,
See
they
if
can go to you, and I assume then you get a benefit because they and their insurance companies are able to pay.
Yeah, absolutely right. And thanks for that clarification. I think it's a really important one. We accept all insurance types, commercial, Medicare, Medicaid. At our Glenwood Springs clinic, about 9% of our patients are on Medicare and 22% are on private insurance. And the story I like to tell there is because we have the infrastructure to serve really complex patients, including all those wraparound supports, that improves the care of everyone who comes through our doors, just because we have such robust capacity. And so if any of you are in the market for a new primary care provider, we'd love to serve you.
Okay. You mentioned that recently, because of qualification changes or funding cuts, that 2,000 of your patients lost their insurance, primarily Medicaid, I think.
Yeah.
And so you lost $1.5 million from those programs, but you didn't lose those patients, right? Those are now needing to basically get your subsidized version. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. We continue to serve those patients, and actually saw a sizable influx of newly uninsured patients across our system. I should have mentioned this earlier, but we operate a sliding discount fee scale. So for people who are uninsured, we help to subsidize that care, and our funders help to subsidize that care for families living up to 400% of the federal poverty level. Most of our counterparts from across the state, and there's 20 other federally qualified health centers across the state, most of our other counterparts go up to 200 to 225% the FPL. Our board, in understanding the unique dynamics of this community and the high cost of living, knew that even folks up to that 400% level still could use access to care that's not full cost.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And the last question I noted to ask, you highlighted how many patient visits you have in the ballpark of 17,000 and in the ballpark of 5,000
Unique
individuals.
patients, yeah. 5,000 belly buttons.
How does that
day in.
proportion of return visitations in a year compare to any sort of average?
Yeah, it really varies. It is largely dependent on the complexity of the patient, the health complexity of the patient. I would say probably the overwhelming majority of those patients are 1 to 2 visits a year. So your wellness check. And then if you have a cold or fever, you come in to get that checked out. But healthcare kind of follows the same 80-20 rule as a lot of other industries where 20% of your consumers or patients are driving 80% of the 80% of the utilization. That's because these patients are living with chronic conditions like hypertension or diabetes, and so just need more frequent check-ins with our staff. And we, in the past few years, we've really leveraged both technology and staffing models to still provide really high quality care that's less expensive. And so we are in a program that's providing blood pressure monitoring cuffs that is remote, that people can take home. So our providers can continue to monitor those patients without them coming in. So that decreases the total visits, while at the same time kind of providing that continuity of care that we know is really important for patients who have highly complex health needs.
Thanks. Where I was fishing was I was hoping to discover that overall your patients are more healthy because you've got your integrated system, you've got your wraparound care with diverse diagnostic opportunities, that maybe this works better than a traditional system. Are you able to claim that?
I think so with some data to back it up. I don't want to say that our patients are healthier than patients seen elsewhere, because I think one of the things that often corresponds with poor health outcomes is lower income. And so I think we kind of have call it like self-selection bias, where people who don't have a lot of other opportunities for healthcare services seek us. But that data I referenced at the top of my remarks looked at total cost of care, which is for Medicaid patients. So it pulls every claim that a patient incurs throughout the course of the year, and finds comparable patients, and then measures how much that patient spends, or how much the state spends on behalf of that patient throughout the course of the year. And that's where we find that federally qualified health centers, including Mount Family's performance, is about 80%. We cost about 80% of what a private independent practice would. And that's in addition to the higher reimbursement that we receive from Medicaid. That higher cost pays for that integrated care and those wraparound services. But what it also does is it keeps people out of the emergency department. It keeps people out of inpatient stays.
Nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Anybody from the public? No? All right. Thank you
Great.
very much. Appreciate
thank you again.
Appreciate the
And,
work you're doing.
Yeah, I sent you all an email today. I'm going to include you on a distribution list. I have a dashboard that I send out monthly that provides kind of the highlights of access and quality and cost. One of the things that's really important to me is transparency and accountability. And as great partners, I want to make sure that you have a line of sight into our work. So thank you.
Appreciate you. All right, next up. Public safety fee presentation. I think that's Chief Darris.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. As we get set up here, I'd just like to share a few remarks with you before we bring up our presenter. First of all, I'd like to thank Hannah Klausman, our Community Development Director, for providing us some information, which is very helpful to us. She's been a great partner in working with me and some of our other teammates over the years, and I thank her for her support and service here. But to begin with, I'm going to introduce you shortly here, Dr. Michael Verdoni. He's from the Front Range. He's traveled over here tonight to be with us to share some information with you. And we've come here tonight because over the last few years, I've determined that previous councils have approved a number of building projects over the years to the tune of about 592 total units. And if you take industry accepted numbers, and particularly in Glenwood Springs at about 2.6 people per unit, that's in the neighborhood of 1,500 people. So as we add these units to the community and add residents to the community, that puts a higher level of service demand on public safety services. And so, thank you, sir. So we had no additional additions to the police department in terms of personnel or generally public safety equipment. Last year, the council was generous and did add 3 new firefighters to our fire department, our fire district. But as this growth continues to go, I don't know that these considerations were given the proper deliberation that is probably necessary as the community grows and our departments stay the same. Most communities, I believe, in Colorado have a public safety impact fee. Now, to be fair, the fire department has had a nominal fee that's been collected through building permits or the building process over the years. Police department has had none. Again, that 1,539 additional residents in Glenwood Springs, that does not include 50 units that have been approved but have not pulled building permits at this point. But as we sit here today, I believe that we have about 309 units currently under construction. And again, at that 2.6 number per unit is where we get that 1,539. I have some additional information if you want, but I'm certainly not the expert in this area. So again, I'd like to introduce Dr. Verdoni here, who can walk you through that public safety impact fee packet I believe that you all received previously. And he's certainly the expert that can provide you the basis for some of those numbers and figures and methodologies about why we're here in front of you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you so much for having me. As the chief said, my name is Michael Verdone. I'm a managing director at BBC Research and Consulting. We're a 55-year-old economic and financial consulting firm based in Denver. I haven't worked with the city before, but I would not be shocked to learn one of my predecessors did. Our firms worked in many parts of the state over our history. So thank you so much for having me speak tonight. So I want to just talk tonight about the study we conducted on assessing impact fees for both the police department and then the fire protection district in terms of what went into the process, the thought that went into setting the fees, and then our recommendations for the fees if you were to move forward and adopt them. And then I'll hopefully get through this fairly quickly and then open it up for discussion and questions. So the chief already provided some background, so I'm just going to skip through that. But for those that don't know, the impact fees, these are fees that are collected usually through a set schedule or formula that's set out in a local ordinance. They're generally pulled through a triggering activity, which is generally the pulling of a building permit. And the reason that you would collect them is to offset impacts that new development has on your capital facilities. So those are any facilities with a lifespan of 5 or more years. Generally, communities that charge them for a variety of services: transportation, parks, public buildings, police, fire protection, stormwater. There's a whole variety. So really the only limitation is that it has to be connected to some sort of public facility. Otherwise, the sky's sort of the limit in terms of what you could charge an impact fee for. Of course, they're important, as the chief said. So they're sort of your guard against having to ask current residents to pay for infrastructure expansion that's created by new development. So if you don't charge impact fees, as that development occurs, you've got to go look for other sources of revenue to pay for the expansion of that capital. And oftentimes that falls on the existing residents. So these are a way to make sure that development is paying its own way as it occurs. They're not uncommon in Colorado. So when the chief said many communities charge these, he's absolutely correct. The one that I would believe is almost universal would be a water sewer tap fee. So those have been charged for many decades throughout the state. And those are a form of an impact fee, even though many communities may not think of it as such. The legal foundation for impact fees more broadly was set in 1999 as a result of a court case of Krupp versus the city of Breckenridge Sanitation District, but codified into law in Colorado and through Senate Bill OS 2-15. More recently, the state legislature has expanded the ability of fire protection districts to charge impact fees independently of any intergovernmental agreements with cities and counties. And so that's expanded their ability to collect additional revenues to help offset that impact that development creates. So just a couple of the requirements. This is a long list, but the first 2 bullets on this list are the most important. So when you set impact fees, there first must be an essential nexus between the development itself and the impact that you're collecting the fee to offset, right? So there needs to just be some sort of logical connection between that impact and the development. So for many of these, it's quite simple. Yeah, I mean, if we think about transportation, as we get more houses or more businesses, there's more traffic generated on the road. So that's the nexus that we're talking about. The second requirement is that fees must be roughly proportional to impact. So that's just saying there has to be a mathematical, rational basis of setting the fee. It can't just be a number that is arbitrarily selected. There has to be sort of a rationale behind it. Otherwise, the other requirements, of course, are that the fees are one-time payments, so they need to generally be collected when the building permit's pulled. You can try to go back later and collect fees on unmitigated properties, but that's generally quite difficult and will often lead to litigation. Again, it's for capital with a lifespan of 5 or more years. The fees must be segregated from other funds, so they can't pay for repair, replacement, improvement of existing capital. It has to go towards things that are related to the impact that new development's creating. They must be imposed on all forms of development, and there must be a reasonable expectation of benefit. So what that means is that you can't just sit on the fees for 10 years and maybe one day you'll spend them. If you collect them, there has to be an expectation that within a reasonable amount of time, you'll expend them to build those capital facilities that you collected the fees for. So very quickly, what's included, what's not in the context of this study. Engines and vehicles, yes. Stations, buildings, including improvements to maintain service, yes. Equipment, apparatus, technology, et cetera, yes. Repair and replacement of existing capital, absolutely not. Operations and maintenance cannot be paid out of these fees, and betterment expansion unrelated to the impact that development occurs also cannot be paid for by impact fees. So 2 methods, we'll talk more about these in the context of both studies for police and fire, but just to kind of touch on them now, there's capital buy-in approach, which is really just saying, what do we have today to serve the community? And we're making future development sort of replicate that standard. And then there's what we'd call a plan-based approach, which is that we know that there's certain types of development that will occur. And as it does, we have a plan to pay for the capital we need to serve that development. And that's the plan-based approach. So I'm going to just jump right into the police department impact fees. So the methodology we used is really identifying, again, that nexus. What's the driver of demand? So police service is generally driven by people, right? We need a population. If there's no people, there's not a whole lot of need for police. So that's thinking about residents, workers, visitors. That's particularly important in your context, right? Because there's a lot of through traffic in this community. It's not just the residents. There's a lot of people that come in and work, people that are passing through. So we really want to understand, how do we spread the burden of the fees around based on that population? So we use the capital buy-in approach. So we're just taking stock of what capital infrastructure do the police have today? What's the value of replacing all of that in today's dollars to provide that police protection? And then if we have to replace it, what would that cost? And then how many people do we spread that over? So just thinking about the assets that the police use, this is the table that we put together with the help of your staff. I don't want to go into it in excruciating detail, but the key categories are buildings and land, vehicles, equipment, and a total value of about $7.8 million. So the first question we have to ask is, how do we distribute that 7.8 million across visitors, outworkers from outside the community, and then the residents of the community? And the way we do that's using what we call sort of a functional population approach. So we're really looking at who's here and for how long. So if we go down this table, we'll start with total residents, and then we look at who's employed in the town. And then we take the people that are living and working in Glenwood, and we say, look, about 15 of their hours are going to be spent just being residents, right? They're not working, they're just here living. And 9 of those hours are going to be spent at a place of employment. So we're going to call those non-residential hours. And then we know we have folks that live here but work outside. So again, they're here for 15 hours, and then 9 they're somewhere else in another community, placing a demand on their services. And then of course you have some non-working residents. And so we think about 20 hours of that day is just spent generating demand for residential services, and maybe 4 is non-residential because they're going to a grocery store, or rec center, or something like that. And then you've got some non-residents employed in Glenwood Springs. So there's about 7,400 people according to census data. We think they're here about 9 hours a day. So in total, that is about 271,000 or 272,000 demand hours per day. And at the bottom of the table, we see that's like a 62-37% split between residential and non-residential. So those 2 percentages become the means of sort of taking that 7.8 million and saying, okay, 62% of it needs to go to residential development, and the remainder goes to non-residential. And once we have that split, then we can start calculating what the fee should be for the police department. So again, we know that there's about 9,900 residents. We know what the cost is for the police department share of that capital, 7.8 million at 62% gives us about $4.9 million. It's about $490 per person. So then we can look at single family residential and multifamily residential and say a single family home is about 2.86 people. We know the capital burden's about $490. So we just do that math and we find that the impact fee on a single family home should be about $1,400 per unit. And that will give the police department the revenue they need to buy the capital that's necessary to maintain that standard of service as development occurs. For a multifamily residence, it's about $1,000. We do a similar math for the non-residential impact fee calculation. So there again, we're calculating what the cost is per worker, and then we're looking at the number of workers that different types of development generate on a per square foot basis and going through the same math and coming up with the fees. So for retail and commercial, it's about $1 a square foot. Office is about 95 cents a square foot. Warehouse and storage would be about 10 cents, which is unsurprising. They're not generating a lot of employees per square foot, so their fee is much lower. So all of that then leads to the impact fee schedule that is documented in the report. So our recommendation for the police is to charge an impact fee of about $1,400 per single family dwelling unit, about $1,000 for multifamily, and then the schedule shown underneath for non-residential land uses. We did a little bit of math. This is always a tricky exercise, right? The crystal ball gazing of what might happen in the future. And if it does, how much revenue would these fees generate? But we did want to go back and look at how growth and development have generally unfolded over the past decade, and then use sort of those growth trajectories to think through what the revenue generation might be. And we think that these fees, as if they were adopted at the levels we recommended, would be maybe in the vicinity of $70,000 per year. Obviously, it just depends on how development actually unfolds, but that's just sort of a ballpark. I'll quickly go through the fire department. It's not too much different. So I'm going to just kind of go through it fairly quickly. The key difference between the fire impact fees and police are that we're using a building metric here. So we're not using population per se. We're trying to figure out how much built environment is residential and how much is non-residential, and using that ratio to allocate the capital needs of the fire department. So in total, there's about $37 million of capital facilities used by the fire protection district fire department to provide service. Of your development, or the development within their service area, about 66% of it is residential and the remaining 34% is non-residential. So that becomes the basis of splitting that $37 million up. 66% will go to residential, the residential fee, excuse me, and then 34% will go to non-residential. And then we're using the distribution of dwellings of different sizes to apportion the part of the cost allocated to residential to those different dwelling unit sizes. So for example, based on all of the math, a dwelling unit of 0, if you could think of such a thing, to 2,000 square feet would be about $3,200 per unit. And then that fee scales proportionally as those dwelling units grow in size. So a dwelling unit of 4,000 square feet or more would pay $12,000 per unit. Multifamily would be about $2,800 for fire protection. So these are a little bit on the high end, not surprising for the community, just given the cost of providing that service. These are, I would say, maybe in the vicinity of 20 to 30% higher than what you might find for similar fire protection districts on the Front Range. For non-residential, again, we're using that employees per 1,000 square feet as sort of a measure of land use intensity to allocate the costs there. And we're ending up with impact fees of between $1 to $2.83 per square foot. And so that's the recommended schedule of impact fees there. This was a little bit trickier to figure out. Obviously, there's a bigger service area for the fire protection district. So the projections, I think, are just a little harder to feel confident about. But if the fees were adopted at the levels recommended, we think it may generate somewhere in the vicinity of $400,000 per year in impact fees for the fire protection district. So a couple recommendations, and then I'll stop talking and we can open it up for discussion. So we always recommend, for the most part, adopting impact fees at the maximum recommended, at the maximum acceptable level. So that ensures that the funding that those fees collect is adequate to build out the capital infrastructure you need to maintain service standards. If you don't do that, as that development occurs, you need to find money from elsewhere, and some of that is going to come from existing residents. There should be a mechanism to credit developers so that if they build part of the infrastructure the fees are designed to collect money for, they're credited for that, because you're not allowed to basically double dip. You can't have a developer build something and then also charge them a fee to go build it yourself. You may consider phasing some of these increases or the adoption of the fees in. So often that's a good practice for projects that are in the development pipeline already that you know about. So those folks are lining up financing and they've done their math on the spreadsheets to figure out what they need to pay for this project. And then if you come all of a sudden and say, by the way, these fees are going into effect, that can really throw off their financing and cause some issues for them. And so it's just sort of a good practice to give them a little bit of lead time before you adopt any changes. Accounting, again, the fees must be maintained in their own separate fund and used only for capital expansion related to impacts of development. I've made this point several times, but just understanding that this doesn't negate the need for current residents to pay for repair, replacement, improvement of existing capital. It's just a way to offset the impact that new development creates. Update the fees regularly. A lot of communities don't. So what I see common or very commonly is that communities adopt impact fees and then they don't think about them for 10 years. And what happens is every year they're kind of just getting eaten away a little bit by inflation so that they don't keep up with the costs of buying the capital they're designed to purchase for the communities. And so if you just make those small updates every year based on the inflation index, that way you sort of, one, make sure that you have the money you need, and two, you insulate yourself from these huge jumps every 5 or 10 years when you go back through a study like this. And then finally, it's good practice to establish a process to address unique scenarios that may come up. So there could be a development that's just very different than anything else. And they may say, look, our impacts just, they're not going to work inside of your framework because we're just so different. And so have a process to account for that. Is good practice, and I can give you some language that we've worked with our legal counsel to develop to do just that. And with that, I will stop and open it up for questions, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. All right, who wants to go first? Sumner.
Thank you very much. I have quite a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead. I know.
So I guess I'll start with the first question. If I understood you, maybe you can help me understand, and I'll round. But for single family, if we were to implement both police and fire, depending on the size, couple thousand square foot, we're looking at, I mean, $5,000 to $8,000 per unit for a single family.
That could be
accurate.
That could be about right. Yes.
Okay, so related to that, I know you need a rational nexus, but let's just say hypothetically, or maybe not hypothetically, most of our growth is going to probably be multifamily, much less single family. I'll get to ADUs in a second. Is there a way legally and fairly to make sure that that the fees for multifamily are significantly higher, both in terms of rate? Can you set the rate with a rational nexus, or do you have to use the per person? Is there a way to encourage one with lesser fees than the other?
Yeah, I think what you're struggling with is a nexus study like this one will set what the top limit is. What you have to decide is what is palatable and acceptable to the community. And so to achieve what you were talking about, you couldn't push up the multifamily because you have a nexus study that says this is what the actual cost is. You could push down the single family if you were trying to create that kind of disparity between the two. I mean, you have to kind of justify that, but that's the limitation we have is you can't exceed what the nexus study gives you as a cost of service. but you can always push it below that.
So again, but from both of you, if we were inclined to push down residential, and that's hypothetical at this point, what legal nexus can we use to do that? Oh, we just like it better? That, I mean, what?
I mean, I think what you would tie it to, or what I would tie it to in drafting, you know, the resolution and the enabling ordinance, to set that fee, I think is tie it to a specific housing policy. And so if you have a housing policy that, favors single family versus multifamily, I think that's what I would
It could be
reference.
done if it were desired.
It could be done if it were desired.
My next question, given what we're also encouraging, is I don't see a category in your study. How do we deal with ADUs that are, say, 1,000 square feet or less? Would that be a new category we'd put in, or a different calculation per bedroom, you know, per number of occupants?
That's a good question. For the study, an ADU would just fall under the single family detached. So when we look at structures, we're using the assessor's database, and it generally identifies whether it's an attached or detached structure. So ADUs to me would be a detached. They're not, if they don't have a shared common wall. So that would fall under the detached in our study. The other thing that I think is worth pointing out is that in a lot of communities, there's a tension, of course, between charging an impact fee and getting development to pay its way, and the recognition that doing so increases the cost of housing for folks that are really struggling to afford it. And so just building on what you were saying, there are also ways that you can incentivize the rebate of impact fees for folks that are employed locally that fall below certain income thresholds. So you can both adopt the fees and still have very supportive housing policies. It's just a matter of how you structure your ordinance to do that.
And I didn't, do hotels fall under your commercial category, not a separate category in terms of impact or anything like that?
That's correct. They do. And in the back of our report, we have a sort of a roadmap that takes those couple non-residential categories and expands those out so that when something comes across your desk as a hotel, a motel, a gas station, you can use that map to say, okay, that falls into retail and commercial or public and institutional.
And then one more for now, and this may be a question for both Steve and you. If this is implemented, whatever structure, fire and police, however we do it, these would go into a very specific capital improvements fund specifically for those departments. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would go, we have a fire equipment replacement fund, so the fire would go there, and then we have a capital projects fund for the police department, so it would go there and we would just create another line item.
So I better be careful how I ask this. So how do our fire, how does public safety, what protects them if the intent is to create a replacement, capital replacement fund and with added revenue imposed on development? What protects them, if anything, in our annual budget procedure with our capital funds from saying, well, you got this over here, we don't have to give it to you like we normally do? You see what I'm saying? Normally the departments would make a request out of our capital fund for pieces of this. So now do we say you're self-sufficient? We don't, what's the interaction between the current process and a new process with a specific funding mechanism, if any? And maybe I'm jumping too far ahead.
No, I mean, we already have a fire impact fee, so we're already doing that, right? And we have constraints on all kinds of our financials, so we're really good at making sure that money goes where it should go. The funding is going to be what the funding is, right? So we're not going to rob anybody of resources. And there are some pretty specific things that we need to do with this money, and there's a lot of constraints. So, but we do that all the time.
And I guess the last quick one, you had mentioned it. Is there, when if an ordinance gets written, is there a cost of living escalator that is put in commonly in these ordinances?
Yes, and that's really up to you as the council to decide whether you do that and how you do that. Our recommendation is generally to just use something simple like the consumer price index, or you can use a construction inflation index as well, since a lot of the cost of impact fees are related to construction. That's generally a good one But either one would be fine. And those are also recommendations in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ray.
So I was surprised at the single family percentage being so much higher than the multifamily percentage, except that if it's based on Glenwood Springs experience, it's probably because we have historically had such a low multifamily percentage of. So with the recent and ongoing multifamily increased density, isn't that liable to be a different, wouldn't it be based on a call percentage to multifamily facilities versus single family?
It can be. I mean, that there's several different ways that people conduct these sorts of studies. We generally just use a land-based approach of looking at the square footage. There are some firms that would use a call-based approach and look at what types of buildings generated those calls. For the fire department, with our discussions that we've had with fire districts throughout the state, generally the feedback has been that a sort of building square footage basis is a reasonable approach to that, in the sense that if you think about it, there's sort of a population-based metric in there anyway. So the bigger the building is, the more people are going to be there. So the square footage is sort of capturing the fact that there's just more folks in the building. So that's just why we've sort of taken that, and it's operationally a bit simpler for the studies itself.
So we could run this study again with some different criteria.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways you could structure these. Some folks will do a whole exercise to look out into the future and think about what type of development do you expect to occur and how quickly will it occur. We did that in the past and abandoned it, mostly because we know what's happening today. We can go and look at what capital you have, the replacement value of it, the way that development has occurred, and we can say with a lot of accuracy what that looks like. It's much harder to say 10 years from now what the patterns of development may look like. We can guess, but it's not as accurate. And then to build calculations on top of those assumptions, to us, means that you're getting an impact fee schedule that may not reflect any sort of reality. The other thing I guess to point out is that you generally would update this every 5 years. So if those changes are starting to occur, you can always revisit the study and account for them at that point. But you'll never get so far down the road that things drastically change before you have an option to go and revise the study.
So I also get the impression that this is much more applicable in a faster growing community setting. I mean, we've gone from what, 4,000 to 9,000 people in 30 years. We're not going to go to 18,000 in the next 5 years. And we can't apply any of these impact fees to anything that is underway already. So it seems to me that this whole thing is much more useful for demonstrating how economically we've provided those services in the last 20 years versus what you would expect they would cost than what it is for the future. More valuable for the past than what it is for the future.
Yeah, that's a very reasonable take. I mean, if you have no growth, there are no impact fees being collected.
And I can't imagine the kind of growth here that these fees would really generate the kind of money that we need to generate. I mean, certainly they help, and I think it's a great idea, but doesn't seem like it's going to do much for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Question. All right, Steve.
Thank you. I have a question that I think is kind of a follow-up on a question that Councilman Schechter asked about your categories, your slides where you summarize the residential and the non-residential categories. On either of those, are those selected? Are those enumerated? Are they named specifically in statute or in these court cases? Or could a city do subsets of some of those. Some are asked about hotels, for example. Could there be a category for hotels versus coffee shops, or do they all get dumped into commercial?
It's a good question. I would say that I don't know about the legal basis for that. I would leave that to your counsel. But I will say that just having read a lot of these studies from other firms, having done many myself, all of us are more or less using a very basic categorization. I think the issue with really drilling down in detail is that within a broad category of land use, you can make a reasonable approximation about the impact it creates on a given capital facility. But when you start thinking about really specific land uses, a coffee shop, a hotel, it starts to get really hard to create that mathematical representation of the impacts in a way that will allow you to create the fee. And I think it also administratively would become so cumbersome because they're generally, the way the legislation's written is that the fees are supposed to apply to a broad class of land use. So the intention of the legislature, I don't believe, was ever to have fees tailored down to specific building types or land uses. It was always to just have a broad categorization. And even this is fairly broad. You can look at some communities and it's just residential or non-residential. I've worked with some communities where there's just one fee. It's on a per square foot basis for any building, whether it's a home or a business. So I would, yeah, my experience has been that categorization is fairly common and more detailed ones are not.
What about more of a structural differentiation? If we end up getting taller buildings, we're gonna need another, how much was that new ladder truck? Could you anticipate that the fire equipment, for example, needed for a different kind of building would warrant a different fee?
Yes, that's a great question. And we do see that occasionally because that's exactly the type of thing that many fire protection districts anticipate, is having that sort of denser, taller development. The problem in most cases is that for fire districts in particular, many of the ones that we work with don't have capital plans. And even though they may anticipate taller buildings and needing a ladder truck, in order to use what I'd call a plan-based approach, there has to be a lot more behind it than just the truck itself. And many of them just lack that detail. So we end up using that capital buy-in approach, which is more of a generalized approach.
Thank you. In one of your introductory slides, you entitled what is and what isn't included in capital, basically, what's the purposes for which this fee is allowed. Can you help me with the difference between including improvements to maintain service, which is a yes, and repair and replacement, which is a no?
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking about this just yesterday as I drove past the fire station in my town. So I live in Louisville, Colorado, which was one of the towns burned by the Marshall Fire, right? And so I think about our fire services quite a bit. And I've also lived in that town my whole life. And I commonly think of this exact question. And the fire station by the rec center used to have 2 bays. Now it has 5, right? So as the communities grow and the station stayed the same, but they built bays on. And so that's what I would consider sort of that improvement based on the growth of the community. But what is a no is to say, well, let's say the fire station was really dilapidated and run down because we just hadn't fixed it, right? And then we wanted to take all this impact fee money and just spruce it up. Like that would be a very gray area from a legal perspective in the use of those funds. But if you're just
you
adding
caught
a
me because
bay-
I wanted to ask that general question, but I do have a specific building in mind where our fire bays now have a 1-inch clearance for the bigger new trucks. We need a new building. That would not be allowed?
to build a new building?
Yeah.
Well, you could build the new building. You couldn't build the new building entirely with impact fee money. So there'd have to be some sort of differentiation between which part of the building is, again, I mean, a lot of this is gray, right? Like the legislation would say that you need to segregate those funds somehow and identify which part of the building would be paid for out of impact fees and which one's going to be paid for with revenues from the existing residents. In practice, I don't think it works that clearly. A lot of districts that I work with, for example, have trucks where they say the truck's old and we would need to replace it, but also we need a different type of truck to serve development. And so there's a commingling of funds that's going to occur when those investments take place, just by the nature of the investment itself. And I don't really know that there's any way to avoid that sort of thing.
Thank you. I, I think my last question might go to our guest expert, might go to legal and administrative staff. Apparently, if I'm following this right, these impact fees don't need to get voter approval. Is that correct?
They don't. Fees are differentiated from taxes. Fees are by statute constrained to reflect the cost of the services provided or the increase of the cost of services provided. So those are things that you can implement via ordinance and set on an annual basis as far as impact fees go. Whereas if you were taxing, say a mill levy or adding to the sales tax, that's clearly a tax that needs to go to the voters and is not constrained in the way it is used the way a fee is. So the fee has to be reasonably related to the, to the services provided.
Right, and correspondingly, revenue from a fee would not be subject to Tabor type budget limitations.
It would not, and keeping in mind that across the board, the city of Glenwood is what we call deep roost. So those revenue limitations don't really apply for most of our conversations that we have. And there are some specific, really esoteric areas where it might crop up, but we don't need to talk about those tonight because they don't relate to any of this.
That's comforting. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.
Right. All right. Then I'll go last.
Thanks, Michael. Just for the purpose of transparency, can you talk a bit about how your contract was set up with the town? It's a flat fee. You're not paid in relation to to what our decisions might be tonight.
If you adopt these or don't adopt them, no, we're just compensated for our time.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Can you give us background? Why is this whole conversation, the legalities, the legislation that went into this, the whole conversation is around capital and not around operations?
It was just the way that the legislation was written in Colorado. So for whatever reason, the
Is it
fees.
different in different states?
I don't work outside of the state, so
Okay.
I couldn't really tell you, to be honest. But in Colorado, it's just written around capital. And I think the intention is just that this is to offset impacts of capital that doesn't necessarily have a way of getting purchased, where once the home is built, you have mill levies that are getting collected on the operational side. And so I think the idea probably was that those mill levies would allow you to sustain operations, but you needed some mechanism to collect money up front to build the sidewalk, to build the road, to build and unless you're going to go past bonds or some other way of raising that revenue, especially in Colorado, because of the way that our tax policy set up, there really wasn't a mechanism to allow you to do that.
I think that makes sense to me.
Counselor.
Yep.
Let me just add something really quickly. I think what you're thinking about is, we need the money more in operations than we do capital. One of the things that we could do, though, is have you guys and the rural fire district change the allocation between capital and operating, so we could recognize some more revenue in our fire operating fund, which would reduce the general fund subsidy.
Yes, and just intuitively, operational is much more straight line, right, than these capital expenditures. And so that seemed more of a natural relation to me. Have you dealt with an area before? So to raise really smart question, have you dealt with an area before where, we're just literally capped on how big we can get, right? We're nearly out of greenfield and brownfield is super expensive. So how does that change the calculus?
It doesn't really change the calculus at all from our perspective. It just changes the amount of revenue a given fee structure would recover for you. So all of our work largely is just based on communities growing and identifying a need to generate revenue to build out infrastructure. And so a lot of our work, unsurprisingly, is along the Front Range, particularly in northeastern Colorado. So sort of east of I-25, Frederick, Dacono, Firestone, Erie, a lot of those really fast growing communities where, they might double in size in 10 years. Some of them may even grow faster than that. And so they need some sort of mechanism to keep up with that. Slower growing communities, I think maybe don't see the need as often. It doesn't mean that there isn't one, because again, you'll still generate revenue. It's just the amount of revenue is scaled to the pace of growth.
Is it appropriate to ask Chief to talk a bit about the status of kind of the capital situation and just how we don't talk about it super often, but just how, how do you feel like you're funded capital wise on an annual basis?
I think we're in a really good place, particularly in the fire department with the apparatus that we've recently purchased. Those go all day long over $1 million every time you buy a piece of equipment. Our stations, to Mr. Smith's comment, Station 1 on the west side is absolutely in dire repair, and we're ready to pull the trigger on that. We just need to find the proper location within a particular boundary in the city. Outside of that, I think we're fairly well situated in the fire department. The police department, I think we have very contemporary equipment. Our police vehicles and all the training and all of that is well funded. What concerns me is that our call volume is extraordinarily outpacing our ability to provide that service that the community has come to learn or expect over the last 20 or 30 years. Given the constraints of the buildability in our community, if you will, is limited, but we are having more and more people still move into the community, traverse through our community, and that's generating a significant amount of calls for service, and to the point where we in the city manager's office receive complaints regularly about the lack of police response or police presence in particular neighborhoods, because we cannot keep pace because we prioritize our calls for service. Just this week, we investigated a very serious sexual and physical abuse of a child, which probably took upwards of, 120 hours of man hours just for that one particular case. When we have people dedicated to that one case, people are still calling in about, hey, what's going on with the burglary in my home? We just can't get to that.
Right.
And so our call demand has really outpaced our ability to provide those services. So we as a group, a council, a city need to decide what level of service are we going to continue to provide, particularly given the resources and the funding that we have. And lastly, I'll say that I think we're at a place where the police department facility itself has really started to outgrow our ability to be effective, particularly with our evidence storage capacity. We're at maximum capacity there, so we need to find alternatives to be able to store securely our evidence and be able to testify into court about his chain of custody. Right now, that's a significant challenge. And again, that building was built 20 years ago, and I don't know that we really, typically police and fire facilities are built to accommodate 40 years of growth. And so we're already at that halfway mark, and we've already outgrown that space. So I'm not sure if I answered your question comprehensively, but I think that's kind of where we're at. It's a point I should have made earlier on that, again, the calls for service, and including the fire department. You'll know that in the last month, we've had 4 major fires in the city. A little unusual, but I think that's kind of where we are as a region. There's one working right now in the Ruleson area, and we have to commit resources to that. So with those kinds of things happening, even on the fire side, we've seen a 7% growth in call for service. Our EMS calls are substantial. We have to do something, and one way to offset some of those costs that the city is incurring, or has incurred over the years, irrespective of future growth. This is a mechanism for us to really start to absorb a little bit more of the capital expenses that we've seen in the millions of dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go last here. I just am curious, is there any triggering for this other than new construction, like a remodel, an addition, something like that, that would change significantly the size of something?
I have seen communities try that and have not seen it successfully implemented. So the best example I can think of is, it was either Pitkin County, but I believe it was the city of Aspen, tried to do exactly that. So they had a lot of houses that were built pre-adoption of some of their impact fees. The one I'm thinking of specifically was an affordable housing impact fee that they passed. And what they did was essentially say, okay, if you pull a building permit for new windows, a water heater, anything, and your house has never paid that affordable housing impact fee, you're going to pay it now. And so people were pulling building permits for windows and getting a bill for $500,000 for an affordable housing impact fee.
Yeah.
So you can imagine they sued. And I don't know the outcome of the lawsuit, except for the fact that I do know that the city dropped the fees for several of the people that had filed against them. And the problem was that In the ordinary, in the legislation that enables impact fees, it says that you cannot remedy existing deficiencies. And so the problem is, once a building exists, it's hard to argue that it created some sort of capital burden. And if that burden went unmitigated, that is an existing deficiency. So then to somehow come back later at another triggering mechanism or attempt to use something else to trigger the collection of fees, all that person has to do is say, well, any impact I created had already existed prior to the collection of the fees and therefore was existing. And I think they would have a pretty solid case that the fees were, there's no legal basis to charge them at that point.
What about redevelopment of something? So say there's already existing structure that was like maybe commercial and now it's going to redevelop.
So I haven't seen a lot of cases where change of land use comes in, but for sure the addition of square footage, right? So if I take a house that's 1,000 square feet and I double it, it's not very difficult at all to go and collect a fee on the addition. I haven't seen as many successful attempts to go after the original 1,000 square feet, but it doesn't mean that folks haven't tried.
Yeah, I think the up and the down of kind of this model of coming up with the fee sort of by category of unit versus square feet in residential in particular. Obviously with commercial, it's a lot easier because we're doing a square foot calculation. But that's the easier way to do it. And then you have a triggering, if it's over a 50% increase in the size of the structure, something like that. I mean, there are ways to address that. It's just harder when we're talking about whole structures
Got
at a
it.
time.
Yeah. I guess in my mind, I'm just trying to think of ways that we could, within the boundaries of, what's legal and fair, address some of the growth of our community.
Yeah, and I think one place that a lot of communities are struggling is that redevelopment is the 1,500 square foot house is being knocked down, and the kind of maximum FAR house is being put up in its place. And does that change the impact on calls for service? This study isn't quite that at that granular a level, but it's definitely something that if we start to see more of that, I think it's something we would want to consider if you guys decide to, to adopt fees.
I guess what I'm thinking of is more of like, so say there is a small dilapidated home that gets taken out and a duplex goes in or a triplex goes in.
Absolutely, that would be considered new development.
So that's,
I mean,
okay. So
Yeah,
that's kind of what I was looking for
that's
clarification.
captured in it. I mean, I think we were thinking more about that remodel that adds
Yep, yep.
1,000 square feet to
Yep.
the 1,000 square foot home. If you're replacing a single family with a duplex, that's just 2 new units.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Oh, looks like somewhere.
Thank you. I guess it would be probably to Steve or to any of us. Great report, comprehensive, new to us. 2 members are missing. What do you suggest would be next?
But I think if you guys would like, we would draft a resolution and an ordinance and bring this conversation back to you guys at the next meeting, and you can give us direction from there.
Oh, you're off again, I'm sorry.
That sitting here, that sounds like a big leap. Would we be better served tying that to a workshop before a podium consideration of the ordinance, particularly with 2 people missing and so many variables? That's what I'm wondering.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. I mean, there's no deadline for this. We could push this out a couple of meetings, and if you want to do a work session, that's great.
Well,
Happy to do that.
whether it's concurrent or separate, I think a work session might help the process. That's my thought. I don't know about my peers. Yeah. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, a work session, definitely, but also I think, as I was talking about earlier, maybe re-looking at the numbers and trying to more appropriately assess the impact of the different types between multifamily and single family. Based on maybe we can forecast what the call percentages are going to be with the increased multifamily units that we're going to have. that are going to come online? Is that, was I making sense about that?
Yeah, I understand that. Again, like my preference is always to avoid forecasting if I can help it, because it's just an uncertain activity.
Well, but if we're not, if we can't even start the impact fee while anything that's under consideration right now is under consideration. It has to be after that. So it has to be 12 or 16, 18 months from now before we can implement this. We know what is coming in the next 18 months, the things that are either in the approval process or have been approved and not started. So we can use those actual numbers.
Yeah, I think that, couple of quick thoughts. So you're really talking about using a different methodology to determine it, which I think is functionally a different study, right? You're talking about moving to a call volume study versus kind of the square footage per person analysis that this study is based on. And so I think from that standpoint, it's a wholly different thing. You can't really take this one and get there defensively. I think you'd have to go back and start at, okay, we're going to analyze call volume to get where to come up with those numbers. And I have no idea if on a multifamily you'd actually get a higher number than you would on a single family on a call volume basis, right? And on a per unit basis, not thinking about a whole building, but on a per unit basis, which is how this would be assessed, is on a per unit basis as well. I don't know that on a per unit basis, you would see a higher call volume necessarily. In the aggregate for a 100-unit building, obviously you're going to see a higher call volume for that total building, but per unit, I don't know that you would.
I don't know either, but I bet we have some of that data.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that'd be very, very difficult. I think we just have to forecast based on traditional numbers, but there are a lot of factors that can impact that. So, and that's not something we would do internally. We'd have to ask our communications authority to put that together. And I don't know if one, they have the bandwidth or the capacity to do that. I think they certainly have the data, historical data, but moving forward, that might be really difficult to forecast. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that'd be a pretty high bar to meet.
Well, we should have the best data possible before we draft ordinances and make decisions.
I don't think there's an argument to that point, but I do think that based on the amount of growth and the number of units that I described here earlier that have come online, and then future considerations for building are kind of where the center of this conversation is at, that we need to consider our capacity to continue to provide services the community has come to know versus what we're going to be able to continue to provide. And then how do we offset some of those costs? And if we're not willing to do that, and this council and the city manager's office chooses to absorb those costs wholly, then so be it, we could live with that. But then this report here exists just to provide us with reference material moving forward.
How long did it take to prepare this report?
In 3 or 4 months, maybe somewhere in that range.
And how long do you think it would take to rework it with some additional data?
Well, with call data, maybe another 6 to 8 weeks. I suppose the point I would offer to you, though, in lieu of doing that, is that we commonly compare communities, the fees that we calculate, to what other communities charge. And some of those communities are using call-based impact fee calculations. Almost invariably, single-family homes are always more expensive than multifamily homes, regardless of the community, regardless of the method. So to me, that would suggest, as Steve said, that there's nothing really out there that would make me think redoing this with call data would lead to significantly different outcomes. So, of course, I'm a consultant and I love to help people figure things out, especially if they're going to hire us to do that. But I would say that it's really not worth your resources to have us go and spend that money and time, because I'm not convinced up front it's leading to significantly different conclusions.
That was what I was wanting to hear. So based on that, I'm still not certain that drafting an ordinance is in order yet. Until we have a work session and get a chance to further digest these numbers. I do like the idea of the impact fees. I think they're a great deal. I just don't think they're going to generate a lot of money for us.
All right. Do we have anybody from the community that wants to comment or ask a question? Nope. All right. I think, were there any further statements that need to happen from the dais? No. All right. So sounds like what I hear is that we should have a workshop on this, loop in our 2 missing counselors and get ready to move forward. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. We got project updates. Welcome, Ryan Gordon. All right. And Lee.
I'm gonna say I know what I'm doing.
All right, not too long. Somebody on that at the podium.
Yeah, I guess. Muse, where is this?
Right here, let me.
Mass.
Right here.
Okay, so I don't disagree, however, they're not doing anything. Doesn't seem to be there, so.
Oh.
Agreed. Agreed, but if you can take a little bit of the pressure,
Yeah, I can just.
the general fund, which is operational. Some. back
down
in
here.
there. You know, like.
I think you will. All right.
All right. It might be. Is that really rare that I'm?
Meta,
Not-
pro tem, with all due respect. You got
Couched in
one
black.
committee, 10
One
votes.
too many pencils.
Oh, that couch.
It could be the 8-hour time difference that I'm trying to overcome.
All right. All right. Good evening, Council. Ryan Gordon, your city engineer, and I have Lee Barger, our transportation engineer, to talk about a few project updates. So we're going to start with Ride Glenwood on demand. And I realize as looking at these numbers, we've seen these numbers before this format, that it would have been maybe better if we provide some contrast, some differentiation between previous months. I have those numbers. I think we'll do that in the future so you actually see whether it's graph form or number form or something. These numbers in the vacuum don't really mean diddly squat to anybody. So let me give you some context on some of these. These are June numbers. And again, you look at this, you're like, wow, it's, June numbers, riders, 4,389. It sounds interesting. Well, compared to May numbers were 2,929. So that's almost an increase of not quite 2,000 riders. The overall theme of this service is been widely popular and getting much more adapted by our community members, to the extent that we are actually seeing some either degradation in wait times, and it depends on how you want to have this conversation, right? But it's just a couple other things, right? So passenger trips are up, like I said, just about 2,000 from the month before. Again, the number of hours the vehicles are on the roads has stayed the same, right? That's a very consistent number. The other one to kind of point out, passengers per revenue hour, right? We're showing 5.3. That's essentially how many riders are being delivered in an hour. That's up from 3.6 in May. Again, showing that we're getting a lot more ridership per hour. A lot more rides are shared, meaning more people, from 21% was shared rides now to 38%. So all this means, right, more riders on it means that our wait times now are kind of creeping up, right? So average wait times for the month of June are 21 minutes versus 11 minutes in May. And talking to the consultant who's put this together, we're kind of approaching sort of the capacity from that passengers per revenue hour. Somewhere between 6 and 8 would be the maximum we would expect, given the way Glenwood is set up as a city and kind of the lengths and distances for riderships, right? So we're kind of getting close to saying not maximum capacity, but getting approaching that sort of that limit. And again, back to these wait times, right? We can look at this wait time distribution numbers, right? So now we are seeing in the month of June, 30 plus minutes for a wait time. That's when you plug it into the app, you make the phone call of when the ride gets to you, the van gets to you. So it's 22% of rides now are over 30 minutes, and that's up from 4% in May. Again, showing a couple things. We're getting a lot more people wanting this service. And we kind of thought this going in, right? As you get more ridership, wait times go up, right? Given that the miles traveled, the vehicles is static. And I know that we've heard from some people like, boy, I called it and it was 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes. And so some of that is due to when they are calling it, right? So these vans are still on our same roads that we struggle to drive on sometimes. So at peak times when you want a vehicle, they're fighting through the same traffic on Grafton Avenue to get to you. So we've seen some of that. We're still kind of sifting through the data to kind of figure out. Again, I think the consistent message here is it has been widely popular and well used throughout. Lee, let's go down to the heat maps, right? I think the heat maps really kind of show, what's going on here. So we have pickup and drop off. So you can see from these maps, lots and lots of deep red, right? We are getting great coverage throughout the entire city, right? People in South Glenwood and West Glenwood, North Glenwood, downtown, being used a lot. So we had extended hours during Strawberry Days and July 4th. We added all of the vehicles onto the road, plus we extended some of the hours again to kind of help shepherd some of those folks. And I think that was used. You can see the spike here in some of those ridership numbers.
This is ridership. And yeah, what's interesting here is wait times were pretty normal.
Yeah.
And that's because we had all 4 vehicles on the road. So we usually have just 3 at a time. That higher, peak during Strawberry Days shows us, it's kind of a little snapshot of 4 vehicles, what it would look like.
So, there's a lot more data, but this is sort of where we are. We are tracking where the numbers are and whether we want to add services, add another vehicle. That does come with a cost implication. So it's something that we are considering, but at the time, we're kind of waiting just to kind of see where the data comes in again for June, right? Recall that we just started this in May. So we're now as of right this second, we're in the second 2.5 month period of this service. So we're still kind of in the wait to see mode, but we are tracking this and looking to see how we can optimize the service. Lee, do you want to add anything else to that?
It's hitting the places I.
Yeah, this is, top pickups, averaging about 150 to 200 a week at City Market. So that's kind of neat to see. Total rides to RAFTA for the month of June were 826. So they give us the data that goes to all the different RAFTA stops and Ride Glenwood stops. So that's roughly 13% of all rides are connecting to RAFTA. You add to that the 250 that are going to Amtrak. These are basically people showing up without a car, right? So they're all taking advantage of this service in a big way. We've gotten a good response from both Mountaineer and Amtrak about, people wanting it and using it a lot. So we actually put a new sign down by the Amtrak station to get the app. So.
Questions, comments?
I got Ray.
So this is really great. Drop off at City Market and pick up at City Market. So that's if you picked up a little old lady in West Glenwood and took her to City Market, then when she was done shopping, she called for a separate pickup.
Right.
And the wait time in 90-degree weather out in front of City Market in the middle of the day for this poor little old lady that she didn't have any idea it was going to be a 30-minute wait time, whatever it was at the time, but.
It'll say on the app.
It does say on the app.
When you order the vehicle, it'll give you.
It said wait time?
Tell you, when they'll be there.
She seemed surprised about it. I'm just thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, in that
That's
case.
an unfortunate.
Right, in that case, maybe the next time you would want to order the cab earlier, or the ride,
Yeah,
you know, when you're in the produce aisle.
and that's something that customers need to figure out. Yeah.
Right. But at least she's getting there, and yeah, not
Oh,
waiting. for
yeah,
the
no,
bus. I
it
mean, her
it
other
was, it was
alternative
great.
is to-
And she was not complaining. I just happened to notice her standing out there in the sun, and I looked around for a car coming to get her, and I said, are you all right? It's been.
Anything else?
Nope.
Sumner.
Well, I've been pleased. I appreciate the work and data we're getting in relation to what Ray said. We don't know, as people get used to it, how proactive they are, because when you go to the app, it'll tell you
Yep.
how long the wait is. Do you want it or not? So we don't know, we don't really know if somebody's planning 30 minutes in advance. Okay, I need to go to City Market. I'm gonna put in for my ride 30 minutes in advance. So as opposed to putting in when I want it, we really can't. We just hope users get used to that. Is that correct?
I think it's a fair statement, yeah.
Well, that could end up working the other way, where somebody orders it and then the van's out there waiting.
Yeah,
And
and they only wait for a certain period of time, and then
Right.
Yeah.
you end up with a no-show, which we actually have
Like,
on this first
turn it
page
down.
here. They register the no-shows. 105 people ordered the vehicle but weren't there. So
Hmm.
You're not Mike, so if you want to keep talking, you should turn it Mike.
I'm done.
so that happens too.
Yeah.
Happens the other way.
That's a really good one to keep track of.
All right, Steve.
And why.
Thank you. These background charts are not legible, at least for me, at this distance. And can you send them around for review in more detail at our leisure later?
Absolutely.
Great, thanks. Could you remind me, Ryan, what you said about the percentage of shared rides one month to the other?
Right, yeah, so the month of May, it was as 21% were shared rides, and that now has been bumped up to 38%.
Okay, great. Can you remind us of the initial purpose or list of purposes for this service, that when it was first envisioned, and how it's playing out compared to what you thought you were trying to accomplish in the first place?
You know,
I remember, for example, as examples,
Yeah.
there was some talk about this is going to inform changes to the fixed route service. This is going to help people get to transit stations. This is going to help people who don't have other forms of mobility. Could you remind us what those were and how it's playing out?
I think you
Yeah.
just did.
Yeah, you definitely hit on the high points. You know, the other big thing to remember, right? This is being funded with a grant from RAFTA for first last mile, right? So their goals, which we have the similar goals, to get people from homes to public transportation. And we do see that happening, right? From to the BRT station to the other places, right? So we do see that happening. You know, the other aspect, right, if you recall, is many of our neighborhoods did not have any sort of public transportation at all. South Glen was a great example. There's nothing there. So this was a goal of extending public transportation into the neighborhoods that otherwise those folks would have to walk a long distance, walk up or down hills. So that was the other goal, is to try to do it. And then in recall, and certainly ties into the TDM discussion that you were part of at the RAFTA board meeting, this is one of the components of the TDM measures, right? How do we encourage people to not drive? And that's a challenge, right? Because we do see the people at City Market now are waiting for 30 minutes. They drove their car. It may not have been that long. However, that's one more car on the road. So there's this balance. We have not, in my opinion, gathered enough data yet to make the determination on the fixed route system yet. I think we need a few more months of data. And we have a spreadsheet that's a gazillion lines long of information, right, that we're sifting through to look at this, including every individual passenger that's on there. We get the information, not who they are or their demographic, but Where do they get picked off? Where do they go? How long, right? So we're starting to shift through a lot of the information. We're working with our GIS group to start to map some of the stuff. So as we get more information, we can kind of dive down into that granularity to better inform our decisions.
I think my related question is correspondingly premature. We want to know some more months and some more data. But a trend I'm going to be watching for and checking in on with you as you monitor all this is, are we having an effect on traffic? If somebody is taking this ride as a substitute for using their own car, haven't we doubled from 2 trips to 4 trips? For example, if somebody could have driven to the grocery store, as you just said, get back home sooner, 2 trips. If they call for a ride, we pick them up, take them to the grocery store, come back to the grocery store, take them. We got 3 or 4 trips involved. Have we really reduced vehicles?
Well, we don't have an answer for that, but also recognize that when that person calls for a vehicle, they are picking up and dropping off people on the way to pick you up. And they pick you up, they do the reverse. So maybe it's a doubling, but maybe it's a significant reduction, right? Because instead of going to your house, picking you up, taking you to City Market, picking you up from City Market and going back to your house, there's been 4 or 5 or 10 or some odd stops in between. Anecdotally, riding it myself, that has happened. And the downside of it is you want to go from your house to City Market, but you go to Walmart first. And so it is not quite as expeditious as perhaps you would think with a private car service, right? So that's just part of the trade-off. But I do think we're looking at methodologies to how we can determine if we are making an effect with traffic.
Good, that's also the basis of my curiosity about the trends in shared rides. So thanks.
We're also looking at removing several, they were on-demand stops in the Ride Glenwood, the fixed route service. So Sopra Center, Gilstrap Court, Valley View Hospital, these are all now served by this on-demand service. So in August, we're gonna stop service to those spots. And those were just causing extra revenue miles, you know, to add up as the buses had to divert from time to time. So that'll be a savings.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add on that, those on-demand will still be serviced, except from our buses, not from our buses, but from our on-demand vans. So again, we're not losing service, we're just changing the methodology.
Any more questions? We get an empty room and not really anybody online, but is there anybody else that would like to say something? So I'm gonna start with some comments because I was like, one of the first things that I wanted to do when I got on city council was exactly what we're doing. And so I'm super excited. And I look at this data and I'm thinking of like all the opportunities that we have for efficiencies. And I think that addresses a lot of what your questions and concerns are, is efficiencies. We have 2.5 months of data. So I think it's really premature to start evaluating the efficacy of this. However, I'm like super excited about to see like just how well received this is. I think that we have an opportunity. I just got done traveling to Europe and seeing how transportation is treated in other communities, other countries. I think that we have an opportunity to really enhance things in our community. And it's going to come down to some really significant fundamental changes in the way that we perceive transportation and how we, move through our daily lives using, kind of, I think, being comfortable sharing space with another person, planning ahead, like your lady, instead of waiting till she gets out front, like she's halfway through a shopping trip and she's calling already. You start to plan ahead in these things. I think that we are training our community to use this effectively. And I'm just really excited about the potential that this has for, making things better for the people who live in Glenwood Springs and the people who visit here. I'm super surprised to see how much activity we have around Amtrak. I didn't anticipate that. So, I think that I'm just thrilled and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing and I appreciate all the information and the data. And I think if we continue to have like more questions, like maybe throw that out and just, maybe an email to Lee just with some of the specific information that you're not seeing and, we can get it in the next update. All right, I think that's that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have other project updates to go
Oh,
into, if you can imagine. You don't get rid of me that quite soon. So I'm gonna jump in real quick and do a real quick Southbridge update for you all. Since our last time, we had a very significant public meeting held at Sopris Elementary. We had somewhere on the order of 150 people, plus or minus. Great showing, a lot of great opinions, both for and against. There was a great dialogue back and forth. Some other aspects of the project. So we are moving ahead, assuming that everything is being funded. We don't have any clarity on what's going on with our major grant yet. So you don't need to ask that question. But we have on the right-of-way purchase, so the notice of intents, the NOIs have been issued to all of the impacted properties. So that's both for right-of-way purchase, permanent easements, and temporary construction easements. Along with that is a site investigation where they look at what's the impact of the properties. Is there more than just the assessment? And then the actual financial assessment are being scheduled. So all that is underway. I don't have a specific date when that's going to happen because it's dependent on replies from the property owner and whatnot, but all of that is working through the system. Again, we are well past the 90%. That was in the beginning of May. We're working with our consultant, Jacobs Engineering, to finalize the design. We're working back and forth on a few things that the city wants. They are working to secure the necessary permits and clearances through CDOT, again, with the idea that the design will be completed at the end of September with the goal to bid relatively soon afterwards. So things are moving right along. The environmental documents have been finalized, are into both the state and federal agencies for review. Have not heard anything on that, so we're assuming things are progressing on schedule. So that's the quick Southbridge update. Not a lot of movement yet, but open for questions on Southbridge before I jump into city projects.
Looks like that one from Ray.
So Ryan, the notice of intent is basically the beginning of the condemnation process?
It depends on which properties we are talking about, right? The notices of intents go out for all of the property acquisitions. So if we have a temporary construction easement, for example, that's the vast majority of them on numbers, maybe not impact, but say you have a property adjacent and we are regrading your driveway, your access point. That's a temporary construction easement. So an NOI, a notice of intent, has been issued to you as well. But that's the first step in the condemnation process as well for any of those properties.
No one has volunteered, no one has volunteered to sell you the right of way.
No, well, no, it's kind of a misunderstanding on the notice of intent. Notice of intent is underneath the Uniform Act. The first step you have to take in the acquisition, whether that is voluntary or involuntary, that notice of intent has to go out. It doesn't have any bearing on whether or not we'll ultimately have to file a condemnation suit or the attitude of the property owner. It is absolutely the first formal step we have to take underneath the Uniform Act for acquisitions. So the vast majority of those, we have talked to property owners. They have to get the NOI because that's what we're required to do under federal law. I would imagine 99% or even 100% of those will wind up with voluntary acquisitions of either the temporary or permanent easements or permanent property acquisitions. So I don't want there to be this misnomer that we're starting condemnation proceedings against all of these property owners, because that's not at all what the NOI is. It's the first required step in acquisition.
Regardless of whether it's temporary, permanent, or little or big or.
Yeah,
It's almost telling the property owner that a project is coming and there are impacts. Yeah. So a notice that we were intending to move forward, basically.
Okay, moving on.
Excellent. Moving on to projects that are currently digging in the ground. So yes, all right. You have seen this map before. Again, it is relatively small. Maybe one of these days I will remember that and do something different, but until that time, it is not. But I'm still sticking with the colors. Green is done. So there's been a few things that have gone from in construction to finished, and highlight those real quick. Wolfson Road, kind of where BLD is in between, let's say, Lowe's and the Rafta Center. There's a small stretch of road that has been repaired. And then 20th Street. So the first 50 feet, let's say, from Grand Avenue up towards the hospital, we ripped out some old terrible potholed asphalt and put in concrete, including some curb and gutter and sidewalk. So those things have been done. One thing that has been removed from this is initially we were going to do 19th Street. We just ran out of dollars for what we wanted to do, so that has now been pushed to the next following year. This gives you a pretty good update of where we are with other things. So I'm going to dive in and kind of go quickly through these. So let's have maybe questions at the end. But our Red Mountain North project is moving along quickly and well. The water line has been in and tested, and services have been reconnected. All the curb and gutter has been poured. So the next step there is to do kind of the final road prep, and then asphalt is scheduled and coming in relatively soon. We're hoping to move that schedule up, but asphalt is a challenging part of all projects to schedule, and a lot of times they are in the schedule of the paving company. So we're trying to accelerate that the best we can, but things are moving along very, very well over there. So I'm going to touch in a little more detail on both Blake Avenue and then 6th Street, the two kind of most, I could say, marquee projects. So Blake Avenue is going really well. We're at either on schedule or ahead of schedule. I think we're ahead of schedule, but don't want to jinx us. So give a little bit better, let's say, detail of what's going on Blake, right? So blue line on the screen that you see is water line. So the water line has been in entirely. And just to refresh everybody's memory, we have a brand new water line from Grand Avenue all the way up past Bennett Court. That is in, tested, and online. Everything's looking really good. So the green is sewer. So we replaced the sewer on Blake between 21st and 23rd. Again, that is in, has been tested and is functioning and doing great. The red line is the stormwater system. So the stormwater, we have a good chunk of the pipe in on, in fact, we have all the stormwater pipe in on Blake from 21st to 23rd. And we're starting to put in the piping as we're going down 23rd and putting in the stormwater boxes, the inlets, that kind of stuff, right? So this gives you a little better feel for exactly what we're replacing on Blake. In addition to this, on Blake Avenue between 21st and 23rd, about half the sidewalk and half the curb and gutter has been poured, and we'll be finishing that the next week or two, and then transitioning down on 23rd Street itself. Ran into a slight complication. The gas line on Blake between 21st and 23rd was quite shallow, and we are working with Black Hills Energy to lower that. It needs to be much lower so we're not having gas leaks and all that kind of stuff. So that's all in the process. And again, we are starting to program towards the end of the project, meaning we're starting to look at when is pave dates, when are we kind of wrapping things up. So things are progressing very, very well on Blake. Wanted to look on our traffic control. So we're going to stick with the same traffic control scheme that we've had since the beginning of the project. We found that most people have figured out where the right routes are and it's kind of settled into a nice pattern. And so we figured instead of starting to change this up on a monthly basis or whatever time frame basis, we're going to keep with what's going on. It seems to be working well with all the stakeholders, Alpine Bank, Big Sid's Liquor, the nursing home, the apartments, and Valley Professionals are kind of the main ones, right? We got a good system going on. So we figured we wouldn't tip over the apple cart right now. We just keep what we're doing. So that's kind of the skinny on Blake. Again, working towards completion date here sometime likely in the September timeframe. We'll see if we can't optimize where we're going on that. So let's jump over to 6. So I got some pretty pictures for you. At least I think they're pretty. So we've moved quite further along, right? As you recall, the last meeting was at the end when we just opened things up after we had a full road shut down for a couple of weeks. Since then, almost all the landscaping is in. This is looking towards the Hotel Colorado from Maple. You can see a great brand new sidewalk. This is our 10-foot wide shared use path. Landscaping on the right-hand side, and we have the parallel or the diagonal parking on the right-hand side. This is looking from the promenade at Pine in 6th Street, looking down the road. So we have this colored concrete and some cool patterns that you're seeing right here in front. It's a raised platform, meaning the road is at the level We haven't had all the features in, right? So on the left-hand side, one thing you don't see, and it's maybe not quite obvious here, as you're coming across the pedestrian bridge, right now it's kind of a free-for-all. Or one of the comments we've gotten is, well, pedestrians get to here and they just cross diagonally. It's, well, in the future, we're going to have some ballers and chains that will direct people to go to where the crosswalks are. And so what we've really stressed to everybody is give us a little time, a little patience while the finishing touches get put on here, right? I mean, we opened this up to what I think is great fanfare and great success, but we still have that last 5%, right? Which will really kind of complete the project. The other thing that was just done the end of last week was the striping, right? Prior to this, when we opened it up, the striping company wasn't able to come in. That made it a little bit challenging for people to navigate the roads. So now with striping, it's a little bit better. And another criticism that we've heard is, man, this road is so narrow. We're really concerned. It's too hard to navigate. Well, I think with the center line painted, it makes it a lot better. You can see in this photo down the way, it's a little bit hard, but there's a dump truck and an SUV, and they happen to be driving by each other, and they did not run into each other. So it is adequately. The width is adequate. And again, this was very, very purposeful from the engineering department of creating a very slow, constricted space where you want to drive slow, right? If you drive slow and careful and cautious, not only do you avoid accidents, you actually can look around and see what's going on, right? So that was kind of the purpose. So again, I think as we get used to this new road, it's kind of like 7th Street, right? You want to drive 10 to 15 miles an hour, right? I think as we get used to this, I think a lot of these issues will kind of go away as we kind of see the last remaining pieces get completed. Looking down the other side now, this is kind of looking Arts Center's off to your left and Chomps looking down towards the roundabout. Again, we have an 8-foot wide pedestrian sidewalk here. We have landscaping on both sides. I think it looks really great. We have a lot of the improvements in front of, say, Sioux Villa, in front of Annie's Cafe, and some of the other shops that they can actually utilize that space for tables and for other usages. I think it's been a very positive project. So looking across the road, one thing I wanted to address, again, I know what I'm looking at. Let me just explain what I'm trying to show. We don't have all the signs up. Right, parking signs, speed signs, et cetera, et cetera. Those are actually be mounted on the electrical light poles, which have not quite arrived. So we have temporary signposts. And so one of the things we have learned is, given the narrowness of the road, not every vehicle can park here, right? We do have some of the larger, longer RVs that extend into the roadway, right? And so we now have 2-hour parking up to get good turnover. That's in one of the other comments is sometimes cars have parked here forever. So it's signposted 2-hour parking. And then we don't want RVs to be parking in this space. So again, we have that sign posted. On the other side of the road, right? So you see the diagonal parking. The other side, where some of the more shops are, we have several parallel parking spots. Those will either be 2-hour parking, and we're looking at adding either 15 or 30-minute parking. Again, to get really that turnover. Springs Liquor made a comment of like, hey, look, people just want to pop in and pop out. Can we have that? The gentleman, I'm going to say Blue Sky, I may be, the gentleman who shares a spot with Sioux Villa, rents out ski gear and bikes, again, is like, look, people are here for just a few minutes to pick up something. Can't we have that? And so we're kind of looking to tailor and fine tune, what we're doing there. So, real positive things. I think the other thing that we've heard from several people as you're kind of looking at the landscaping is assuming get to, some of these trees are smallish. Well, they are 3-inch diameter caliper trees, right? And so we just have to let nature kind of take its course. We looked at larger trees, bigger diameter trees, but they're really not available. And then also these are specifically chosen to grow and to mature to about 20 to 25 foot high. We didn't want to have this situation where they're bigger trees. Now we're cutting limbs and now they're all kind of weird geometrical shapes because of the limbs in the roadways, right? So we just have to kind of wait for these to kind of mature and grow. And they're going to grow. I think the arborist told us something like, like 5 feet a year type thing. So they're going to be growing. And so we just got to have a little patience while this stuff sort of fills out. But again, I think it's a great change and an upgrade from what was there before. So that is my update on what's going on. I didn't touch on North Landing, but real quick, what's going on there. Most of the concrete and say the underground work is either done or is being done this week, next week. They are setting we have a lot of the big red rocks that we harvested from the mountains and their debris flow project that are coming in and being set, artistically and decorative. So that's happening next week. Concrete's being poured. The slab for the bathroom is being poured. Foundations for the sunshades and the trellis is all being poured as well, right? So we're really getting close to where a lot of the major activities is going to be really ramped down. Gould's pulling off a lot of their major equipment. It'll be landscaping, kind of the finer stuff. That bathroom, again, recall, is still not being delivered till early next year. So that will be the last thing, but we are moving right along and looking really positive out there. So that's my updates. Looking for any questions or concerns that I can answer from anybody here in the council.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Anybody got questions? I got Steve Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Very quick, compact summary of big work. On 6th Street project at the Pine intersection, can you say more about the ball and chain technique?
So absolutely. If you're walking down the pedestrian bridge approaching 6th Street and Pine, there'll be a series of bollards and some decorative chains that will prevent you from just simply walking straight into the intersection. It will direct you to either side where crosswalks are located. So it's going to define that intersection a little bit better.
To one question and one vague memory. I thought that was the intention of the original design, that it becomes basically a barn stance.
I mean, we still want to, so we have the wayfinding. So we have the vision impaired wayfinding crosswalks. So the intention was that you would be directed towards basically those areas. So it's not true barn dance. If you particularly look at how those pedestrian, I lost the term of what they're actually called. The bumpy stuff in the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually direct you to, let's say, the four corners of the intersection. So that's what the design was and what was installed.
And how wide are those openings for where you are directing people?
So the chains will go across sort of the full entrance. When you come across the pedestrian bridge, those bollards and chains will extend, say, nominally the width of Pine.
How wide is the pedestrian crossing?
Oh, I understand.
That's
I got you.
facilitated.
Yep. Those are
between
both,
those chains.
8 foot wide, basically. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
No,
correctly at all.
that's the question, and that's the answer. I'm now contemplating it. The goofiness of that situation at Pine and the north end of that bicycle pedestrian bridge, since it was put in 2016, is that it went from 16 feet to a pedestrian ramp that was barely 4 feet 4 inches. It just really can create a congestion and confusion. Is 8 feet going to be enough to avoid that kind of thing?
I'm going to say yes. I think time will tell, but I think certainly it's a massive improvement from before. And again, in the picture above, right? So right in front of, it's a little bit challenging. I apologize. Right in front of the orange fencing, you can kind of see the textured pattern.
Yeah, that kind of like darker
where
khaki.
that is. So, I do think this will facilitate good transportation movements.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you've helped me ask a better question. How wide is the contemplated colored or otherwise crosswalk itself?
I believe they're both 8 foot wide.
Okay, so that would correspond to your opening in your fence.
Right.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. And one last thing that I have in my notes that I wanted to mention is we are having installing rapid flash beacons, right? Both at the roundabouts at Village Inn crossing now to the new Colorado, and then of course to the Mavericks, and then again as you come out of the tunnel. Those are, we just received the actual units and those will be installed. Our goal is to have them installed by the end of this month, end of July. So those again will be a nice safety feature to again promote some more safe pedestrian crossings and biking crossings.
And are those the ones that blink all the time or the ones that only blink when you push the button?
Only blink, you have to hit the button and then they'll actuate, yeah.
You get more, Steve?
Oh,
Nope.
thank you.
Okay, no problem.
I
All right.
pretend that when I say thank you, the light goes on.
Counselor Schmal.
Ryan, how programmable are those rapid flashing lights?
They're fairly programmable. I'm not sure exactly what programmable ability you're referring to.
So from the time you push the button
Yeah.
until the time it stops flashing. I've noticed on a number of the ones around that they continue flashing for some time after the pedestrians are gone. And at the roundabouts, especially in front of the Village Inn, that's going to be a big deal. If people are stopping because even just stopping to look and nobody's there, eventually they're going to start ignoring them. And if they're stopping there too long, those roundabouts are getting backed up already on a regular basis anytime pedestrians are in the neighborhood. So the timing will be critical is what I'm.
Yeah. I don't, Counselor Small, I don't have an answer for you. I am assuming, and this may be the wrong assumption, that these have fairly robust way of changing the timing of them. And I say that because these are solar powered and Bluetooth enabled. And I'm assuming if you have those two that you can change the timing of those lights, but I will look into it and make sure. But that's a comment that's well received and definitely agree with you that, yeah, we can get sort of fatigue, rapid flash beacon fatigue, and that's what we don't want. So
Yeah.
well taken. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anybody else? No? All right, so real quick. We got a text message. I got a text message. I think Counselor Shatner was included on that about somebody that had an uncomfortable encounter with an e-bike on the new like shared sidewalk. Are we gonna have, you said something about speed limit signs. Is there gonna be anything for like cyclists? Or maybe like
That's
a
a good
request to
question.
dismount?
I'll go
or-
back and see. Yeah, we talked about having, dismount signs out there. You know, the other thing that Lee and I and Lee's really been looking at is again, trying to figure out a way of utilizing River Road that wraps around in front of Hotel Colorado to facilitate bikers that are maybe wanting to bike for exercise and as opposed to just kind of cruising around, right? If they wanted to get to say Two Rivers Park, go around River Road, and we're going to look at do some striping and some signage to kind of direct traffic, biking traffic that are saying in the canyon, that direction. And then you're right. I mean, you know, we may need to put out some signs on some additional signage for biking. Because as I can see, right, we know with e-bikes, it is a challenge and those are heavier bikes.
Yeah, just that one section, that's it's about maybe a block and a half where it's, a lot of shared use. You've got a lot of retail and you've got restaurants and you've got, a lot of opportunity for people, pedestrians. It might not be a bad idea.
And certainly on the south side, right? So in this picture, it's off to your left-hand side, right? That's a sidewalk and not for bikes.
Got it.
Right. And so I think, again, there's going to be some learning that we have to do, which includes us with some signage and some information out there for users.
Cool. And then it looks like, and I was going to make one quick comment if I could about the small trees. I have a background in landscaping. The smaller the tree, the faster they grow. The bigger the tree, they get more traumatized and there's actually kind of a dormant period. So you may see bigger trees sooner with the smaller trees. So just anecdotally. All right. Counselor Shatner.
Thank you. Just piggybacking off Mayor Pro Tem. I think we are lacking some biking. We may not all agree on this, but I thought I have not noticed our no biking signs downtown. And I thought, I don't know whether they've disappeared or faded or we've changed the rule. And I've seen some very reckless biking and type 3 modality that probably shouldn't even be allowed on the sidewalks with throttles. So I don't know, we have to revisit our signage and our code, but we're gonna end up with some conflicts that either have been let go or need to be addressed. And I don't mind getting off my bike and walking.
Yeah, thank you. Counselor Smith.
Just to be sure we have a balanced conversation, you will hear some severe grumbling from this corner when you talk about dismount zones. The increasing anecdotes and general trends of conflicts between increasingly powerful bicycles and pedestrians, bicycles that are going too fast, that seem heavy, that really are self-propelled, is an issue well beyond any one block, new or otherwise. So I think it's a policy question that is going to need a more comprehensive approach. And I know the Transportation Commission has occasionally talked about that. It may be a good, more deliberate assignment for them to look at that issue. And without in meanwhile, reflexively jumping to things like dismount zones in certain spots. The downtown dismount zone, I think, is wholly appropriate. I know this is kind of venturing off topic, but since the topic came up, is totally appropriate because at best, those are 8 feet wide sidewalks and they're compromised with shop signs and landscaping and surprise furniture and such. So it's thoroughly appropriate down there where there is a lot of doorway conflict and a lot of clutter. When you got a brand new space working here, where you got one side that's fully 10 feet wide and one that's 8 feet wide, I think you got an opportunity to be more creative and more inclusive, especially with the diagonal parking compromising the bicycle safety on that one side, that one direction of 6th Street. Wayfinding guidance for different kinds of riders, I think, is a brilliant idea. Trying to get the canyon riders to go down to River Road is great, but the design themes in the introductory materials for the 6th Street project those years ago was about making it bicycle and pedestrian, both users friendly. So be slow, please, in leaping to dismount zones as a solution, and let's think about it a little more comprehensively. Thank you.
Anywhere else? So one last thought. When I was on transportation, one of the things that we talked about, I recall, was some striping or some sort of a kind of a laning for bikes that would help pedestrians. And I didn't see that. And I don't know if that's something that's coming or did that get removed from the plan?
So you're saying striping on the shared use
On that
path?
shared use
Yeah.
path, like just like a little bit of a zone for like.
Yeah, and that was not eliminated. That actually wasn't also included. If you recall, we kind of changed up how that side was, but it's something that we are discussing.
Got it.
And
then-
we are,
yeah.
and again, you know, not that you're not, but patience as we're sort of learning and figuring this out. I think your comment is well received and something
Yeah.
that we want to do. Because I do think we're going to have to think through this and make sure as it gets much more popular, again, where we're sending bicyclists versus pedestrians versus strollers and all that kind of stuff. And I agree with you. We talked about, a center line down there, right? Bikers to the right, walkers to the left, or however it's going to work out, and figuring out what the right solution is.
Perfect. It just popped in my head when we were having that conversation. All right. Anything else? All right, moving on to, looks like ordinance 2025-22, amending model traffic code section.
This can be incredibly short. At the request of the municipal judge, we're making a couple of tweaks in the timing of hearings on impounds of vehicles. It's a very kind of inside baseball kind of thing. This really in response to the fact that we hold court once a week. We have a part-time judge. It's very hard for us to respond always within those 3 days that has always been in the model traffic code. it's cropped up a couple of times to be an issue. He reached out, requested we make a couple of tweaks to see if we can't make that a little easier to get in the flow of the regular kind of workflow for the courts. And with that, Chief Hassel has a staff report, can answer any of the technical questions, but I think we're ready to move forward.
So would we be making a motion to approve this tonight? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, public hearing, lots of public, but you still need to ask
All right,
and then
let's-
motion to
on the
approve.
agenda. All right, perfect. Anybody have any questions? It looks like Councilor Weimer.
Is that to imply that the impounding is happening and making differences?
I don't know if it was specifically the ones you're thinking of, but yeah, we're doing
I'm not
about that.
thinking of anybody, actually. I was
Yeah.
just curious,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Yeah, no, we've just had a couple of cases crop up, actually unrelated to the parking, which is we'll be getting there, but this was a different issue that really brought it to our attention.
Not
or
the
to the
scoff
judge.
laws, these are other.
Yeah, it's my favorite word.
Yes,
scoff.
I love
It wasn't any of the scoff laws, but
All right,
Thank you.
Councilor Smith.
I think my question is certainly similar, maybe the same. Do we have a sense of how many impounded vehicles really get reclaimed?
well,
That is
let's
just plain
back up
abandoned
to
vehicles versus new
yeah.
parked vehicles.
So this is really specific on. There's lots of them that get reclaimed potentially. This is about whether or not you feel your car was wrongfully impounded and that there was probable cause to do so. Very different set of issues.
I guess more basically, how often does this happen?
Yeah, a few times a year.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, anybody like to make a motion? Oh, yes, sorry, thank you. Anybody from the public care to ask a question or comment? No, okay, moving on. Oh, yeah. Last. Councilor Wyman.
Thank you. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, I move to approve ordinance 2025-22, amending the model traffic code section 1816 regarding the impoundment of vehicles as written, as presented.
Do we have a second? Councilor Shatner.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Alright. All right, moving on. We have an ordinance 2025-24 to budget amendment number 4.
Thank you. Each quarter, we do a budget amendment to reflect things that you guys have asked us to do that weren't originally in the budget, and sometimes to update a forecast to make it more accurate. So this is the second quarter's budget amendment.
Do we have any questions?
I love how it just blames us.
I know, it's always us. I mean, why should he be any different? Councilor Smith.
What, yeah, I know Parks is not represented, but do you know what happened or is going to happen for $380,000 at the Wave Park? Is this the crosswalk business or is it something else? Okay. Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Hearing none, is there a motion? Councilor Shatner.
Sure. Mayor Pro Tem, I would move that we pass ordinance 2025-24 budget amendment number 4.
Excellent. Councilor Weimer.
So seconded.
Your motion in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I'll do that next time. All right, moving on to council comments. Anybody got anything fascinating to say? Ooh, all right. The city manager. Oh, nope, go back. Hold on.
Thank you. I got a fascinating tutorial last week about heaved sidewalks, which has happened. We're pushing now 18 different locations where sidewalks have heaved, where you normally, I think, they're roots or freezing and thawing, but it turns out it's heat. This happens more in the summer months, or some heaves become bigger. And so Public Works Director was telling me about it. We were talking about something else. I learned about this. I thought you might find it of interest. There are 14 locations and potentially 6 more where this has happened, and 9 of them are in process of being fixed now. What happens is the concrete itself actually expands and shoves onto itself until it finds a weak point, and it blows up to some pretty severely dangerous spots on sidewalks, and they're out there fixing it. There was one spot over by the Renew retirement home where the vertical curb actually delaminated, just kind of sucked itself, jammed itself. It's amazing. So Public Works is actually coming up with new juncture design and maybe even new concrete material. I think it might be a fascinating feature for a city newsletter or a city announcement of some sort. But in any case, I found it fascinating, and they're dealing with it. So I thought that was kind of cool. Parks and Recreation Department, as you all saw, just sent out their periodic email newsletter of what in the world they're doing out there. It is remarkable. It is just the diversity of programs in general, but especially summer youth programs with their youth passes and youth catered activities, and even youth interns and employees.
Yep.
It is a hopping place out there. It is really remarkable. Punctuated by August 9th, before we meet again. August 9th will be Glenwood Stock, which is a music and food and activities, games festival focused again on youth with youth bands. Hot stuff going on at Parks and Recreation. I think it's
That's
really
their
remarkable.
second annual, right?
Second annual
There you go.
Glenwood Stock, right. The city newsletter, just this last city email update, reminded people about their fines for letting bears get into their trash. Can somebody please remind me what process and what cost it takes if somebody wants a bear-proof can? Because that may prompt that question again. I know it keeps coming up, but I just need a reminder.
Yeah, they would just have to call Waste Manager or Mountain Waste. And I don't know off the top of my head, but I will get you the
Okay.
cost numbers.
Great, thanks. And I think there's another comment to maybe follow on one from you, so I'll save that one until then.
Yeah.
Then my final one otherwise is to ask about the homeless seminar coming up next week. Do we need more background as people ask us about that? What prompted that? What's its intended purpose?
The intended purpose is just to kind of educate the public and let people say what they want to say. What prompted it is just kind of heavy activity recently, particularly, over behind Walmart with the fires and stuff. So we've been getting a lot of comments, and a lot of just ignoring it won't make it go away. So we'd just like to talk to the community a little bit.
And the presentations, sounds like it's going to be similar to what we heard a meeting or two ago from the police describing what they do, can do, can't do.
Yeah, that's basically right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Micah, there you go. All right, thank you very much. All right, so city manager.
A few things. I'll try to be quick. First, and I think most importantly, I wanted to take a minute to thank Hannah for all of your hard work. You are a talented public servant and a professional, and I've enjoyed working with you, and I appreciate all that you've done for us. You'll be missed here. So, engineering is looking at I've had a couple of you ask about the sign, "Welcome to Glenwood" on the south end of town. We're negotiating with CDOT. They have a lot of rules around that, but we are working through that process, and we'll get there at some point. We've got a URA meeting coming up. I think it's next week, I want to say. that has been sort of laying dormant really in the time that we've had it. But we're getting to a place now where we're going to start making some decisions. So hopefully that's on everybody's calendar. And if you can make it, it would be terrific. These fire restrictions that we're going into also causes us to close down the gun range. The gun club is okay with that. They have asked for one exception for a skeet thing that they're doing up there with shotguns. So we're going to allow that. That's an easy concession for us to make. And we've asked them to take a water truck up there. But other than that, the gun range is closed. We are launching on Monday a tourism promotion RFP to find a tourism promotion vendor. I've had this conversation both with Angie at the chamber and with the tourism board, but I will mention to you, I don't think anybody will ask you, but we really shouldn't talk to the chamber about this at all. I mean, if somebody thinks that they've got inside information, we would have to disqualify them, and I don't want to do that. So strategic plan, I've heard from some of you guys. If anybody has any other thoughts, if you could get them to me by, say, the end of the day Monday, I will get all that together and we'll shoot it out. And then I think we've got the plan is for a morning meeting at Hotel Colorado a week from today to take that back up. I think it's a week from today at like 7:30.
7:30.
Okay, I'll make sure that we get it on. There have been a few complaints from the community about the buses parked out in front of Colorado, right? Being interest to Glenwood and stuff. So we've asked them to move those and they have agreed. I think one of them is already gone, but the other one they're going to put somewhere else too. So if you're asked about that, that's what's happening there. We just finished our annual CIRSA audit, and the result of that audit came back that we scored for the second time, in fact, more points than are possible. The top score is 100 and we came in at 103. And I will say that, credit where credit is due, even though I hate to do it when he's in the room, but that is a lot of work. And Ryan Muse manages that relationship very, very well. And why it's so important is that we have the lowest insurance rate that we could possibly have as a municipality. And that, it's everybody. Everybody does their part. Everybody does their training. Everybody's got their equipment up and stuff, but it doesn't mean that it all happens automatically. So thank you, Ryan. You are particularly talented at managing that part of our organization. So thank you. Last thing. Let's see, yesterday we had our annual employee appreciation barbecue, and it was the best turnout we've had ever by far. I think everybody was there except maybe some of the cops and firemen that weren't on shift. And an interesting thing sort of has happened in the last few years, and that is that the people that didn't want to come to work at the city of Glenwood Springs every day aren't here anymore. And the people that either couldn't keep up or weren't really carrying their weight aren't here anymore. And what you're left with is a group of people that is really performing at a very high level. And I could not be more proud of that team. And I think the energy in that room was good. I think things are going really well from a staffing perspective. And it just was, I don't know, it was one of my favorite things. So a couple of you were able to make it. We appreciate that. That's it for me.
Yeah, I wanted to just piggyback on that because I went, I just got back into town and I saw it on the calendar and I made sure that I wanted to go, and I was blown away. I walked into that room and it was packed and it was good energy. Everybody was smiling, having fun. Bree was killing it with her jokes and her dances, and it was really, really great to see. It's a big reflection on the team and the culture that has kind of evolved up at the upper level there, and our community is benefiting greatly. So thank you. All right. Counselor Smith.
Echo, I was delighted to be able to go to that. It was at once very humbling and also just thrilling to see the dynamic represented there. It's so easy, certainly for me, to sit around and think about good governance and policy measures and design for community, but they're doing it. Those are the people who actually make the community click. And they not only do that good work, they showed up in these diverse costumes and job assignments and lifestyles and jargon, and enjoyed spending time with each other. It was this immense 200-member team that appreciated each other as much as they were being appreciated. It was a very gratifying experience. So thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Counselor Schmal.
My observation is that those teams of highly talented, highly motivated, highly competent people are built by the management. And it's a top-down thing that makes that work, that makes you see what you saw, Counselor Smith. And I applaud Steve and the rest of the upper management staff in having achieved that kind of employee base. I hope that we're able to extend that to the police department soon, so that people want to come and work at the police department, that good, competent people want to come and work at the police department, and that we can afford to hire them.
Thanks for saying that.
Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah. All right, city attorney?
Just a couple of things real quickly. Talked to Mayor Pro Tem and the mayor about this, and Steve, I am not going to be at the next meeting, which I actually can't remember the last time I missed a council meeting, honestly. But it's my daughter's 25th birthday, and so I want to go out to Chicago and see her. Just by happenstance, we are a little short-staffed in my office, so Richard Peterson Kremer will be online. So he probably won't be here for the work session, but he'll be here for the regular session. You guys, some of the council knows Richard pretty well. He works on a lot of issues for the city, things like the mine, Mitchell Cooper, things like that, as well as having his own practice in towns that he represents. So anyway, I'm going to miss the next meeting. In my head, I was thinking about it. It's kind of funny. I can always remember how old she is because that was when I started working for the city. To begin with, was 25 years ago. So anyway, the other thing I want to say is I want to say thank you to Hannah. One of the things you guys don't see is that planning and legal work really closely together on so many of the things that go on, everything from code updates to policies to housing to all of those things. And one of the great joys is to work with a really good community development director that is willing to think about things creatively and to push the envelope. And tolerate the fact that myself and my office can be a little bit demanding to work with. And I genuinely appreciate that Hannah has kind of stuck with us through all of that. And it really isn't our fault she's leaving. But greatly appreciated working with her, and wish her the best of luck.
You should hear what she says when you're not around.
Don't worry, she tells me.
Yeah. I would like to say some Hannah love too, because as a new counselor, I had a huge learning curve, and you have not only been a very gracious source of information, but super responsive, never make me feel dumb. So I'm going to miss the heck out of you. All right. Any correspondence?
Yep.
What do we got?
We have some thank you letters. We have.
They're for grants.
Yeah, they're from Fab Grants. We have one from Literacy Outreach, which is ironic because I can't read. One from Veterans Coalition. And one from Access After School.
Sweet. Thank you. All right. Hey, Sumner. Do we have a social event tonight?
Oh, I'm supposed to know. Oh.
Should I turn you on?
Sure, there will be a social event held at Doc Holliday's tonight.
Excellent.
For those, anybody who chooses to attend.
That's right. Anyone? Oh, welcome. All right. So now I can just like, all right.
Well, you have to make.
Oh, somebody has to move.
The chair doesn't actually have to have.
I know.
The chair can be on any meeting anytime.
All right.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adjourn.
Anybody second?
Yeah.
Okay.
There it is. It actually.
Move to adjourn at 9:10 PM.